What's considered retro? Question mark. And shared. All right.
Sweet.
I'm good to go if you are, sir.
Yeah. So why don't you kick this one off?
Kick it off when you're the one with the notes. Well, we're doing an episode. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I am. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All the Way Down podcast, our now christened podcast with a name.
Yeah, we have a name for it now.
I'm InvictvsNox, I guess your host tonight, and tonight is my co-host, DashRetro.
That's me.
That's him. And we're both retro streamers here on Twitch. Check our channels out. You know who I am already. Dash, check him out. He's way better at most games than I am. Platformers especially. We've talked about this at length in the last episode. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely go to YouTube right now, and then you can definitely... you can listen to the YouTube thing. We're also going to have it on Spotify soon.
Yeah. So, we have... this time we came prepared. We got a topic right away. Let's jump right into it. So this time, we're doing a structure. We got topic. So one thing being, streaming retro games on Twitch, one thing that comes up a lot, especially because Twitch has a category specifically called just retro, and there's a tag called retro, right? So it comes up a lot, like who's allowed to use it and what games are allowed to use it. Basically, like, where do you draw the line as to what is and isn't a retro game? And so we came up with this a bit ago. Have you thought about it at all? Do you have an answer already?
Yeah. So, little bit of a precursor info here. I came to Dash when I saw this topic, and I was like, okay, this is going to be either a 5-minute topic or a 5-hour topic. He assured me that it could be a 5-hour topic. Paraphrasing here, of course, but I think, okay, so if I were to put it simply, I consider retro to be at the end, kind of like middle end of PS2 territory, but rapidly kind of growing towards the Wii kind of generation.
That's
obviously everything
that's
before that, yeah.
Well, keep going as long as you got.
Well, I was gonna say, so from PS2, like middle era, I'm gonna again big asterisk, because early PS2 compared to like late PS2, because PS2 had a long run. It was the most popular, successful console of all time. Has it been surpassed yet? I don't think it has. Almost. Anyway, but from there all the way back to, literally Gen 1, we've got that's before the Intellivision and then the Magnavox Odyssey, all that, obviously retro, unquestionably. It's just that, like, when I think about it in other like kind of genres, I'm thinking about like cars. A classic car in the United States, at least legally speaking, is 25 years old. You can't import anything into the United States unless it is older than 25 years old, and then it gets grandfathered in because it's eligible for antique plates, I think. I think that's the correlation there. But video games and technology in general age much more rapidly. But at the same time, people don't. Like it's something that scales faster than human growth does. So you're left with, is only 25-year-old games, are only those considered retro? Or do you consider a smaller scale for technology's sake? But I don't think technology, even with cars, technology improves them exponentially over time. It's just they've been a little bit more of a constant measure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're going with the draw the line at a point in time approach, which I think that's certainly one way to approach it. The only thing about that is that the line always has to be moving. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it also kind of differs. Like, one thing, you mentioned the Wii, and that's an interesting point about it, because if you're just looking at Sony, I would agree with where you would place the line, right? In either you say PS2 is and PS3 isn't, or maybe it's even somewhere in the middle, but probably that. But then with Nintendo, I feel like the Wii is retro, even though that's a generation later. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at Microsoft, I don't know if the Xbox is retro. Is it? Maybe. I question it.
I think it is. I think if
mm-hmm.
you hand me a copy of Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, I'm not going to be like, whoa, I have this on my 360 already. Why did you give me this? You know, it's like, it's not like one of those games. Well, it actually did get carried along a little bit as a remake, but different story. It's, if you look at the games from that era and then like compare them to now, it's like, oh, this wouldn't fly. It's like, I thought we figured out 3D movement by now.
So this is a topic that I've kind of thought about a lot because, like, I kind of approach it from like a technology standpoint a little bit, where, so for me, I think that there's a huge advancement that actually happened with from PS1 to PS2, which is that the NES and the SNES and the N64 mostly, as well as all the stuff before it, all ran in 240p, right? 240p was the video game resolution for generations. And then it was like basically some PS1 games started to run in 480i, but it wasn't until PS2 where now 480i is like the minimum, and 480p then started to get pushed. So I feel like there's kind of a line that gets drawn there also. But here's the deal, though, wherever you put the line, as far as what's retro and what's not, my issue is that it keeps moving forward, where PS2 maybe is retro now and PS3 isn't, but maybe next generation PS3 is retro, because that's just naturally how it is, you know. When the PS2 first came out, PS1 probably wasn't considered retro at that time, you know, but now it is. So it's moving. Now, I think that at some point there is clearly a distinction between what is currently considered retro and what is not. And many years down the line, when all of it is considered retro, that doesn't mean that there's not still a distinction between the first and the second half of it. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is we need more words. Retro and not retro doesn't cut it anymore. I think
there's vintage. There's like,
yes.
Yeah.
At some point, we're going to have to start saying things like Atari and Magnavox Odyssey and that shit. That's getting to be vintage now, you know what I mean? And then retro is going to be this middle spot, right? And then you've got the just kind of old, and then you've got the current stuff, you know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing I like about the word retro is it gets thought about a lot in, maybe this is just solipsism, but we're streamers. We see retro as a categorization in terms of what people are streaming, and it's retro, and then that kind of just puts it into everyone's different subjective kind of idea of what is or isn't retro. Like there's another whole can of worms we can open up. Retro styled games. People will stream in retro playing games from last year just because of this actual style of them. But I like that retro is like an umbrella term, because you can it's going to make old people like me mad, because when you say the Wii is retro, you go, dude, like that was last Christmas.
Right.
That was like
I always say that, you know, the Wii was the first system that I bought launch day, and now that's retro, but I was old enough to buy it launch day when it came out. Ugh, you know.
Okay.
Mario Galaxy is 10 years old, dude.
So you mentioned generations, though. So, yes, the Wii, if you consider it 2 generations behind, like if you go from current gen, you consider it current gen, past gen, and then retro is all the below, that then puts systems that are not that old in the spotlight for retro. Because if you think about it, how long did the Wii last? How many? The typical console cycle is 8 years. The Wii U, I don't think. Well, obviously it was out and it was you could buy it, but like that's not what they were hyping. You know, they were kind of more hyping. Okay, E3, we're going to start, I guess it wasn't E3 at this point, but it was Nintendo Direct. They were just kind of like showing Breath of the Wild. And then, ooh, look, it runs on this hardware too, because that's one of the games that was like, on both cross-generational, I guess what you'd call it. But with systems like Xbox and PS4, where they're following, even though they add their hardware revisions, like this is the Series X or this is the PS4 Pro, it's still the same, system. It's going to run the games for it. So they typically follow the same convention of about, I'd say like 5 to 8 years, probably a little bit closer to 8 on that spectrum. And then the next big thing comes after. Whereas Wii U, I mean, it didn't last very long at all.
Yeah.
So then you've got Wii games being retro, while 360 games are, what the fuck are you talking about? That's new. It's like, okay, well, yeah, because it's Dark Souls and you just got it remade. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, right. Like, it is really weird to think, like, the idea that the Wii is retro and the Wii U isn't,
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't sound right when you say it that way, But the Wii did 480i up to 480p, and the Wii U did 1080p. So, like, that's a huge difference.
It is. From the GameCube, yeah.
That's the thing with, like, when you look at it from the technology standpoint, and that's and that's kind of what I was getting at with, like, there's clearly a distinction between these, like, eras in games, and so to give them only 2 categories, like, isn't enough anymore. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you mentioned about retro style games, though, because that's the other thing that so if you want, like, my real opinion as to, like, when I think about retro video games, like, what do I really think, is it actually is more of a mindset and more of a style thing. To me, the idea of retro is put the game in and play it. And I realize that I'm being extremely hipster right now.
No, I actually think you're being extremely boomer right now.
Yeah?
Back in my day, we didn't have day one download, that kind of thing.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Back in my day, games didn't have to install on the consoles. You didn't have to download a 30 gigabyte patch the day that you bought it and brought it home. When, the game that is on the physical piece of media that you purchased, that is the game. You're not relying on a server in order to get patches to get the rest of it.
Yeah.
There's not a whole bunch of DLC and microtransactions and shit like that, right?
Oh,
to me, like, so when I think, like, this is retro game, and I think, yeah, I've got the game, it's on this thing, I put it in the system and turn the system on and I play the game, right? That's retro. Problem is, though, I do understand, though, that means that, some very new games are retro. A lot of Switch games are retro because of that. You know what I mean?
So you consider it retro then?
This is a tiny bit tangential, but it is like, when they announced that the Switch was only going to have, like, 32 gigs of internal storage or something, and a lot of people were like, oh, that's a joke in this day and age. My initial response was, yes, that means companies still have to finish their games before they release them. And they can't rely on day one patches to fix their shit.
That's a great point of view. I didn't think about that, yeah.
So yeah, you got to understand, I'm not trying to tell you right now that the Switch is literally a retro system.
Yeah.
But it does have an infrastructure that supports that feeling that I like of the put the game in and play it mentality works on Switch. And so as a retro gamer, I really like how that system works, You know
what I hate though? About the Switch putting games into it?
The flap.
Yeah,
the flap, it doesn't go flush with the top of the system on mine, and I sit there and I poke it and try. It drives me nuts.
Oh, I would be
livid.
Too? No, mine doesn't. Well, it's my girlfriend's. It's not mine. And she, I think, mostly, like, if she has a physical game she'll play, it'll be the only one. So there's not a lot of traffic in that area, is what I'm saying. But I'm dreading the day that like the plastic bends back a little too far, and then it's like, oh well, it's kind of old, so the plastic gets brighter near the crease, and then it'll eventually pop off, and it's like, okay, well, this retro system, we're speaking as if it's 2041 right now, this retro system doesn't really work very much because back in the day they designed them with these like Samsung tablet screens, and their charging ports can break real easy, and then this little flap here breaks. It's like, dude, what is like an immaculate Switch going to go for in 20 years? That's what I'm curious about.
Also, as far as weird things about putting the games in, the label faces you when you're holding the system. That's weird.
I like it for marketing's sake, but it goes against every technology asterisk insertion type I've ever gone with, because you always want the data side facing the thick area of the machinery, because that's most likely where the reader is going to be facing.
Exactly. And you know what other system has that exact same problem now? Is the PlayStation motherfucking 5. That system has the disc slot on like the bottom of it.
Yeah.
If it's horizontal, the disc slot is on the bottom half of it, but the labels face up. And so if you have it sitting vertically, the disc slot is on the right side of it, and you have to put it in with the label facing left. The first few times I put discs in backwards because of it, because it's
so the label faces
like
if you laid it flat, it faces up. That would kind of make sense. But if you have it horizontal, which they themselves recommend for cooling efficiency,
you mean vertical?
Yes, sorry, vertical. They recommend it vertical. You have to hold it to the left. But I'm trying to think of the way that the body is shaped. It doesn't really kind of...
Oh, the body is shaped like a fucking nightmare, dude.
Well,
it's like this wonky, wobbly-ass thing.
Yeah.
So it's like a tower, right? But then one side of it has this weird tumor that is the disc slot.
Yeah.
But it's on the right side. So you would expect the label to face right, but it doesn't. It goes the other way. So
it's flush though, right? Or no, I'm looking at a picture of the body right now. There's kind of like a beveled edge, like a chamfered edge coming towards you. So putting it in and
it's really weird to put discs into this system.
I've never considered that nitpick I have with disc-based systems. I guess that is weird. I've seen a PS4 or a PS5 in person once, and it was behind a Target display case. So I didn't hate it as much in person as I thought I was going to.
I still hate it.
It's a butt-ass ugly console, and I'm not buying one until they can make a slim version that looks way better, but...
Yeah, I mean, to me, just the fact that you have to put a stand on the system in order to lay it horizontal is like, it's like a joke.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I mean, it's going to be a meme at some point. It already is a meme. What am I kidding?
Well, right. We've all seen the Seto Kaiba images of it.
I think they knew what they were doing. I think they said, we need to make something that's going to Sonic the movie up the crowd, and then... see how it goes.
I really honestly thought that was going to happen. Because, this was right after there was that Sonic trailer, and everyone was like, good God, what are they possibly thinking with this Sonic design? And then the Sonic team, or the movie team, was like, they actually delayed the movie, and they said, we're gonna fix it up. And it was such a big deal that it was almost like the fake Sonic, or the bad Sonic was fake. And that they wanted to give people the mentality that they fixed Sonic by complaining about it. Thus, now it is our movie and not the studio's movie because we fixed it, guys. You know what I mean? To give people that feeling that now we got to go see it because we fixed it.
I want to believe.
It almost seemed like that. And right after that, this PlayStation 5 gets announced, or the look of it gets announced, and I was thinking it was going to go in the same direction. We heard you, all right.
Because all that they showed in the beginning were 3D renderings. They never actually showed the physical thing. I could see how you'd think that. I'd be like, okay, this is a 3D rendering for a reason. Obviously, things are subject to change.
Well, I didn't actually even consider that, right? Because before, whenever they unveil the system, the look of it would always be at like E3 and stuff, right? Pull the curtain back or have Reggie come and hold it with his gigantic hands so it looks really tiny.
Does he have huge hands?
Dude, do you remember when Reggie showed the Mario Kart the Wii wheel? He just like held it like this, like Kevin Garnett
It's
holding
pretty
a basketball.
small. Okay,
and it looked tiny.
It's pretty okay. In my defense, and I've shoveled through enough Goodwill gaming bargain bins enough to know that wheel. Maybe I just have big hands, but like it fits pretty easy.
It's pretty small.
It's pretty small.
It's pretty small. But it was just he made it look tiny.
I'm just kind of what got me more than the actual subject of that was just the fact that there might be something out there that everyone thinks Reggie just has huge hands. I don't know.
I should clarify. He's just a large man. Like
I think he's like what 6'3", 6'5".
I imagine that he's that tall. I don't know though. I've never seen him, I've never even really paid attention to it. I've just always assumed that he is an enormous man for some reason.
Yeah, like Shigeru Miyamoto, probably like 9 feet tall, easy.
So the only thing I can say that like is okay about the PlayStation 5 design, like the thing that kind of made me go like okay about it a tiny bit, is realizing that it just kind of looks like it's from Portal, It looks like they took inspiration from that style of future design of where everything is like smooth and white plastic over a black technology center, and yeah.
Props to them.
It looks
though.
like
they made changeable faceplates, kind of like how the 360 started doing.
Yeah, but then that company tried to make colored faceplates and they cease and desisted them.
Did they really? Oh my god, really? See, that I would believe that from Nintendo. I didn't think that would come from PlayStation. I was thinking they were actually officially interchangeable. Is that not a thing?
Well, there may have been a little bit more to the story. Like, don't take it at super face value. There may have been like the PlayStation logo on the faceplate, and so they didn't want people to think it was an official product or that kind of thing. Might have just been something like that.
Right. But coming back to what you were saying about the Switch, you were saying it's basically the system you want to buy if you want to play retro-styled games.
Well, yeah, like if you're a grumpy asshole like me and like you just want to put the game in and play it, then the Switch is the system that like has that mentality still. The games are relatively small, they're still on cartridges, there's not a lot of patches and that kind of thing, and so it's it's an easy, simple system to use.
Would you say there's not a lot of patches then? Because I feel like the one Switch game I played recently, 2 of them actually had a patch, but it didn't take too long to download. But
they're going to be small, even.
Yeah.
Like when you do get a patch on a Nintendo game, they're generally really small. Now, let it be known though, like it might depend on the game also, right? Like I'm not playing, they released like Doom 2016 on it, right? Or like God forbid, let's say a Call of Duty game comes out on the system. And they have to like patch that a bunch, right? Those might be big patches because it's fucking Activision, I play mostly Nintendo games on the Switch, so it might just be a Nintendo thing.
Yeah, if we're gonna talk about, can we talk about retro stuff that seemingly may not be retro to everyone? Have you ever played this might even be just a DS game, but not even a 3DS game, Call of Duty Modern Warfare on the DS?
No.
It is fantastically awful.
I'm trying to remember the name of it though.
I'm pretty sure it's just Call of Duty Modern Warfare DS or something like that. It was definitely the Modern Warfare universe.
Okay, it might have a subtitle on it because like I know when they put like World at War on the Wii, it had some little subtitle on the name to be a little different, to like differentiate it, But yeah. Either way, though, no, I've not played it. I watched the Scott the Woz video about like all those Call of Duties, though.
Yeah,
the DS ones and the Wii ones and all that. They seem pretty awful.
I haven't seen that. But I am looking at Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the original thing. It doesn't list 3DS, so it probably does have a different subtitle. But essentially, imagine, not on 3DS, mind you, but I played this on my DSi, so I know for a fact it's a DS game. It's a first-person shooter game on the DS, and you use the stylus as if it were a mouse in a mouse and keyboard game. And the game itself, I'm telling you, probably talking it up a little high here, but I got the same vibe that I got when I played GoldenEye as a kid, because it was one of those games that if you have other friends with DSs nearby, you can broadcast it to, and they can play as kind of like how Mario Kart, you would have to be like a Goomba or whatever if you didn't own the game. But if you own the game, you could pick whoever you want, but you could still play it with everyone. I love that feature, but they had that with the Call of Duty game. And me, my girlfriend, and her cousin, and I think one other person who might have been in the house at the time where we were hanging out, we're all just sitting around, just maybe I was the only. Maybe I liked it because I was the only one who was doing good in it. But it was predictably terrible, but it didn't handle anywhere near as clunky as you'd think it would. And
oh, dude, yeah,
I would consider that not retro.
You don't think the DS is retro?
I think the DS has plenty of retro software, and I'm a little bit. But see, this comes back to objective point of view here, because I mostly skipped the DS and 3DS generations. Ever since I stopped playing handheld games, which is the majority of my gaming as a kid, and built a computer, I'd say, and got the PS2 era, I pretty much was out of handhelds altogether. I missed the PSP. Regrettably, I missed both, but the Vita as well. And I didn't really do DS stuff. I tried. I bought a DSi, and then I got Pokemon Leaf Green because I wanted to play red version, but in HD graphics. It lost my attention. Wasn't a fan. Sorry, that was on the DS Lite that I bought after. DSi, I bought Diamond. Platinum, which is Platinum, Diamond, and Pearl. That generation of Pokemon didn't hold my attention. So I didn't really do any mobile kind of gaming around that time. So that span of time in my head may be smaller than most. It's. Okay. I know the DS has been around for a while, and pretty much by anyone else's metrics, it would be considered retro. But what's some games on the DS you would immediately go, "Oh, that's old school"? If you were to play it now.
Like Castlevania: Dawn of Sorrow. Mario 64 is on it, so you got that.
Yeah. That game is always relevant and also retro. Because shit's always being done to it.
Or there's Super Princess Peach, I think about DS, and a big thing of that is the resolution is smaller than it is on the 3DS, where when you play a DS game, it's got it's real chunky, right? It's got that aesthetic, which I love, of it's 3D, but the pixels are still pretty big because the resolution is down where the N64 was, and so when you look at a DS game's graphics blown up, it looks like an N64 game or something.
Well, yeah.
It looks a little better. It looks a little better. But it's so old school.
Its resolution is pretty much the same, isn't it? It's not 240p on that bottom screen, but it is nowhere near 720p.
Oh yeah, it's more around the 240 kind of range.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is, but that's what I'm telling you, is that when those games are when you look at a DS game, it looks like either a Game Boy Advance game or an N64 game or something, as far as the pixel size versus the 3D polys and that kind of stuff. And I think it looks super old school, and I really like how it looks. I wanted to respond to what you were saying about Call of Duty and how it handles.
Do it.
And this also goes right in with talking about the 3D look. So my game on the DS, very similar to that, was Metroid Prime Hunters.
Oh, okay.
That game, oh man. So the thing was, that game sold me on the DS before the DS even came out. If you bought the DS right away, it came with a demo of Metroid Prime Hunters. And at the time, man, it was just the coolest thing in the world, because you got to remember that the Game Boy was a system where, except for a couple exceptions, if you wanted to play multiplayer with somebody, both of you had to have a copy of the game
And a link cable.
and you had to have a link cable.
Yep.
And for a third person, they had to have another link cable, and so you had to have, everybody had to be tethered together. And the official link cables were like 3 feet long.
Oh, they were tiny
or something. Yeah,
But they did allow you to daisy chain, like well, it was not daisy chaining, but add that additional link to it for up to 3-4 people. And I thought that was cool, but I never got to use it. I still own my original link cable for my Game Boy Advance, and you're right. It was when I pulled it out, it was like, I have a link cable from my Game Boy, like DMG, that will still work because it's the same port. And it was like much longer, and it was aftermarket, and I was like, why would I not just use this? I'm gonna use this.
Yeah. The Game Boy Advance one, that, like you said, though, it has that port for a third person to plug in on it specifically, and a fourth person. But yeah, the idea of having 3 link cables and 4 people with 4 Game Boys, all with a copy of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past / Legend of Zelda: Four Swords on the Game Boy Advance.
It was Minish
just
Cap,
so they can
right?
play Zelda together. I'm pretty sure. Nah, it was Link to the Past had 4 swords with it, and I don't know if I bet less than 0.1% of people who owned The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Game Boy Advance actually were able to play 4 swords. Because who the hell has that setup, you know? Who the hell has 3 other people who have it? They all got a link cable. They all got together to play it. Maybe you did out there, but you're the 0.1%. I'm telling you.
You're the people who probably actually attended a LAN party, had enough friends to do at a LAN party back in the day. That was not me.
So here's what I'm getting at, is now the DS comes out, and first of all, communication between DSs is wireless now.
Oh, yeah.
And man, was that absolutely revolutionary, because not only is it, like, it's wireless, yay, there's freedom from the cables. You don't have to have a cable anymore, and it feels... so you don't have to be 3 feet from the other person. You're not tethered together. There's not that problem, right? But also, it's a device that you don't have to buy. You know, you don't have to buy the cable anymore. So that was awesome. Then the other thing that they did was download play. I don't know who I'm talking to right now. If there's like children who don't remember this, and I'm just like their grandpa telling them about how it back in my day. But that's what it was. Download play was this new thing where only one person had to have the game, and they could play multiplayer with other people wirelessly who didn't have the game. They went to download play on their DS, and their DS would download from the other person's DS a small version of the game. To get even more old school, it was like a Spawn install. Remember Spawn installs?
I do not.
For like StarCraft?
No.
So StarCraft had a thing where on the installer, you could install a spawn of the game, which didn't require a product key. So you could install a spawn on one PC and then install your main copy on your PC. And then you could host a game on your CD key verified copy, and a spawn could join and play multiplayer with you.
Okay.
So it was like that. Another person's DS who didn't have the game, they would download a small version of the game onto their system, right into the RAM, so they could play multiplayer with you. And then it would just, since it's RAM, it would just be gone once they turn the system off.
This sounds like exactly how that Call of Duty game worked, though.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
This is kind of why I'm talking about it, because that's what it was. It was download
And you
play.
didn't like that?
So I loved it.
Oh, I'm saying that's what I loved.
Revolutionary, dude.
It was
this
insanely
was the
good.
new shit. And so the game that we played with it, though, is so Metroid Prime Hunters, there was a demo of it when the system came out. And, it was the coolest fucking thing, because it was Metroid Prime. It was first, so it was a first-person shooter. But, yeah, you used the stylus to aim and the D-pad to move, and L was shoot, and it felt so
weird,
good
but it worked
to play.
I thought it felt incredibly bizarre.
I know people who still play first-person shooters like that to this day. They use a trackpad on their PC to play first-person games with. Because, it was a really great way to control. And then it wasn't until like 2 years later that they finally released the actual Metroid Prime Hunters, which had online play at that point. Now it had Nintendo Wi-Fi online play. And, oh, man, I'm sorry that this is a whole story time, right? But back then, when this shit was new, having a wireless router in your house was not common. Wi-Fi was new shit. And, it's really interesting to think about how groundbreaking the Nintendo DS was at the time. It had a touchscreen on it. Shit didn't have touchscreens back then.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
When the Nintendo DS came out and had a touchscreen on it, the only things back then that people carried around with touchscreens were Palm Pilots, and people don't even know what the fuck Palm Pilots are anymore. So, that shit was revolutionary.
Can we do
a
timeline check real quick, though? Hang on. Palm Pilots existed, likely, but mainstream use at the same time as the Nintendo DS?
Yeah, they were before, but
I was gonna say,
I think they were.
It's like mid '90s.
Yeah. So Palm Pilots were out for a while, and then in 2004 the DS came out, but other stuff didn't have touchscreens yet, really. And then it was the iPhone and the iPod Touch and stuff that came out kind of shortly after. I think, I don't know, but the point is, it was pretty damn groundbreaking to have a touchscreen on the DS. Especially at the price point that the DS was. But then also it had Wi-Fi, and back then, Wi-Fi was not something that people just had in their houses. It was a big deal that, there were ads out that said, hey, Nintendo, get this, Nintendo partnered with McDonald's to have Nintendo Wi-Fi hotspots at McDonald's.
I think I remember
so that people... Yes, so it was advertised that you could go to McDonald's because they had Wi-Fi, so you could play your DS online with people, and that was a big deal. So for me, we didn't have a wireless router in my house, so there was a product that it looked like a USB flash drive, because we had internet, we just didn't have Wi-Fi.
It's like a dongle,
so
right?
You would. Yeah, so you'd plug this USB dongle into your PC that was a Nintendo product that would share... It had its own Wi-Fi signal that would share the internet with a connecting DS.
That's nuts.
And that's how I played Metroid Prime Hunters online with people. And I had a blast. The number one guy, shout-outs to I Eat Poo. He was number one on the Metroid Prime Hunters leaderboards until Action Replay came out and ruined everything. Then Action Replay came out and everyone was invincible online, and it wasn't like there were patches for DS games, so we weren't able to.
Oh no! And they didn't even go back and try to fix it.
Well, what do you do? It's a retro game.
This
is one. See, the DS is retro, Nox.
No,
the DS came out.
You
and
just described every reason why it's
the
not
landscape.
You just described every reason why it's not retro. You said, "Oh shit, it's got a touch screen. Oh shit, it's got Wi-Fi." The devices before that were lucky if they had a hard drive.
It's a good point.
So I would say that's generally why that's my cutoff. It's okay, PS2. You could buy the Slim and it would have an integrated network port, but you know what it wouldn't have? It wouldn't have the hardware on board that the PS1 or that the PS2 had to essentially run PS1 games without, as far as I'm talking out my ass here, mostly not emulation. It puts it through its own upscaling, obviously not upscaling, but It's running at 240p, but I think it will run PS1 games at. Well, PS1 games had 480i anyway. But my point.
Some
my
of them,
point.
yes.
It's you. I'm thinking about a PS2. If you think about it in terms of the Game Boy Advance, a generation earlier, which is the same time as PS2, you get exactly what you said. 4 link cables to play on a Game Boy Advance versus Wi-Fi. A whole new method of propagating information that most people didn't even have in their homes yet seems pretty a futuristic leap to me. Now, if you look at the gameplay, though, even the gameplay alone, the DS and the Game Boy Advance, insanely huge jump. Like the Game Boy Advance had minimal ability to actually process and render 3D graphics. I'm thinking like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I think there was a Spyro game that did that too, but I'm probably mistaken. Either way, it couldn't do anything close to what even the early DS did, which I think technically was even like less well spec'd out than the later normal Nintendo. Oh my god, we don't even need to get into Nintendo's crazy DS line naming convention, like new 3DS, all that stuff.
So DS 3D or Game Boy Advance 3D, like the Tony Hawk games you mentioned, because those, it was like the environment was 2D, but it was isometric, right? And then, it was just like the player models, though, were 3D.
Was it isometric? I thought it was actually full 3D from what I saw. I think I saw a screenshot from Kotaku that I was really impressed by. I thought I saw footage. I'm going off memory here, but...
Okay. Every Tony Hawk game that's on Game Boy Advance that I know of was an isometric perspective.
That's cool.
But there was a Need for Speed game, I remember, that was fully 3D. And there were probably other fully 3D games also. But even in the Tony Hawk games, though, you're right. The character models themselves were 3D.
I'm thinking it was like 7. Like just 7 Game Boy Advance games that were 3D.
Yeah, it was very few of them. Kind of like the 3D on the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo had Mode 7, so a lot of games looked 3D, like Super Mario Kart, but they weren't 3D.
And that's
but then like
that's all on the processing
on
board on the chip of the cartridge. It's not actually to do with the hardware, like the apples and oranges, because cartridges, and they can essentially be just second computers.
No, you're right. It's a really important distinction. Yeah. The Super Nintendo can't do it, but the cartridges themselves, some cartridges have the Super FX chip, and they have 3D in them, like Star Fox and Yoshi's Island. And that's why most games have only used the middle pins, but then some games have the two pin sets on the two sides. Those are the Super FX games, I think.
For Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's there's games that are just one solid PCB edge, I guess, edge connector. That's not the word for it, but yeah. The PCB leads, essentially. There's just one solid piece for the most of the games I'm thinking about, but I guess the Mode 7 ones have 2 pieces. Makes sense.
Well, not Mode 7. That's what we're talking about, the Super FX.
Not Mode 7. Okay, I get those confused actually a lot. Mode 7 is different. Mode 7 is just taking a 2D plane and flipping it horizontally, from what I remember. No. Backwards. You take the horizontal plane, you flip it vertical. That's Mario Kart. You put a sprite on the background level of Mario Kart, which is designed to be laid flat, and then you get the track.
Yeah, so that's just a clever use of it. So really what it is that there are 8 modes on the Super Nintendo, which are like the different layers that it can draw things, and Mode 7 is the furthest back layer. And that layer has the unique ability to stretch and scale and rotate the image that's on it. So, the ability to take a still image and like turn it and squish it and do all that kind of stuff, only the background layer can do that, and that's the layer called Mode 7. Because the layers are called modes, and it's the 8th one, and so since we're starting at 0, it's Mode 7.
Oh, okay.
And then,
that makes sense.
And then if you cleverly use your scaling and stuff, you can make it look like a Mario Kart track.
What other uses did they have for that, though? I feel like there was definitely a few other games.
Tons of stuff like in any time that you saw something that like went like wow, wow, like that kind of stuff on the like
the scaling
the
on the
Bowser fight at the end of Mario World.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mario
kind of
World
like
has that scaling.
he like flies at the screen. In Contra 3 when there's that plane at the start that flies at the screen.
I haven't seen Contra, but I know what you're
kind of
talking about with Bowser now. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, what were we talking about?
We were talking about why retro does not fit the Nintendo DS.
So besides games that use the touchscreen, I feel like the gameplay, like if you take like Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, that plays just like a Game Boy Advance
Absolutely, because it also plays like the PS1 game, as far as I understand. I actually own the game,
the
but
PS1's pretty retro.
Yeah, well, the PS1's definitely retro.
Mm-hmm.
God damn, like PS1. I was listening to another podcast talk about like how Crash Bandicoot essentially was needing to take advantage of way more horsepower, but Sony had a library file or something that they said, hey, you have to program your game based around this library. And apparently that library file was so poorly optimized or something or another that essentially they couldn't use about like 80% of the available horsepower of the PS1 to draw polygons. Like, it was just the way Sony's framework had it. It's made it so that they had to figure out, okay, well, we can't do an open 3D world like we want to, so how are we going to do it? Well, we could make it so the character is, has to come back towards the screen for some of these levels, like Crash Bandicoot, he does. And that way you get to see his crazy cartoony face, and it shows off the polygons there. And a lot of the polygons in the maps, I think, are actually mostly just Crash and his animations. So that's kind of how they had to work around that. They had to, like, hack Sony's... API is not the right word, but that's the word I want to use. But yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Did you know that when the PSP first came out, they limited the processing power under like its full potential?
Do you think that's
I forgot
on
what it
purpose?
is. Yes, to save battery power for
sure.
Oh,
well, I mean, like I thought you meant like as if you were just kind of reducing its processing capability just for the heck of it, early on in the life cycle.
Well, 100%. I think that it was a decision made early on for battery life and heat concerns as well. But then later though, when they wanted to make the system a little bit more exciting, they did unlock it later and then allow later games to take use of it. I want to say God of War Chains of Olympus might have been the first game to use the full processing power of the system.
It probably needed it. But
that game looks real good, and so does the other the two God of War games on PSP are awesome.
I didn't get to play them yet. I wanted to because I played all 3 God of Wars. I haven't played 4 yet. But that actually, what you were just saying reminds me of. So okay, hang on. Now I had a train of thought and I lost it. One subject ago we were talking about the DS and why it's not retro to me, but we're talking about after that. Fuck. Damn it, I've totally lost my place.
I think we should maybe try to wrap up the what's retro discussion.
Okay. What's the latest you consider retro? Because it's definitely going to be later than me.
I don't know, man. PS2, I think, for Sony, and Wii for Nintendo.
Is retro.
And... yes, and Microsoft. You know what? I just don't know enough about Microsoft to say. So I just don't know.
I was a huge fan of the first Xbox. Not a fan of their naming conventions because I can't say the Xbox One. But retro, I would definitely consider it alongside the PS2. As far as games late in its life that I would not consider retro, the craziest fact to me was that the last PS2 game got made in 2014. Like the PS3 was out.
Right, yeah. It was
It was
probably like FIFA, right?
I think it was exactly FIFA, and I think
Yeah.
it's because FIFA has so many fans in South America, and I want to say that game might have released in South America exclusively, if not Europe and South America. And I didn't really understand it until I heard, just digging into some history about EA. I always wondered, like growing up, because I've never been a sports fan. I've always been that kind of dude. I can actually have fun with sports if I'm playing them. And there's not a lot of sports I like to play, and there's less that I even go out of my way to even think about. But like I can have fun that way. Video games, no, didn't get it at all. But there are those people that just play, like you said, Call of Duty. Call of Duty, you talk about a franchise that's earned its massive player base with Madden and stuff like that. But I never understood how this stuff could come out year after year with very minimal change. It's like, it's football. What changed last year? I didn't get it until that EA stuff I read into. They were like, first of all, very characteristic of EA. They go, we put money towards making sports games every year because they're cheap to make. People are going to buy them no matter what. And there's way more of those people out there.
Are they that cheap to make, though? Because I have a feeling that NFL makes them pay out the ass for licensing, you know?
So I think... Oh, I couldn't even pretend to be in an NFL league, like, you know, business executive, knowing how the deals that they have operated back and forth between the EA are. I couldn't pretend to know any of that, but like if it was even remotely what I think it's going to be like, both parties are going to come out making a fuck ton of money. I don't see why they wouldn't just be mutually be okay with it. Licensed or not, like it's EA. EA's already got huge money anyway. They could probably get around licensing no matter what.
Right, yeah. Like they certainly want to be the company that makes the games because because like you're saying, it makes a lot of money. But because it does guarantee them a bunch of money, I can only imagine what the fees are for them to, for them to license that out. Same with like WWE and all those other things.
Yeah. I think there's just way more money than I can fathom seeing in one place going on regular transaction-wise that I just don't consider.
Yeah. It is a crazy thing with that kind of stuff. Like just how much, like when you hear that like this movie had $150 million as its advertising budget, right? It's just like, how the fuck did they recoup that, you know? But it always just turns out for me that like I always just forget just how many fucking people there are on the planet. You know?
Yeah.
Like there's just so many people.
The problem is like our brains aren't evolved enough to understand how the internet works. Like we don't understand the scalability of the actions we say and do and take online. Like if you were a content creator and you think like all of my friends like this kind of game, I play this kinds of game. That's gonna stick with your perceptive of gaming. So there's so many more people that are not me. That like I'm probably like 1 in like 50 gamers compared to like, you know, people who are sports fans, which are probably a bigger significant portion of the ratio of overall gaming population. You go into a Goodwill now, and I say this because I like to go thrifting for like retro games and such, but you go into a Goodwill now, what do you see the most on the racks? If you know a spot that has video games together, you see
racks and racks of sports games.
It's 50% sports games, and the other 50% is literally just the same version of Wii Fit. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's the boards everywhere too. But
God, Wii Fit.
And actually,
do you remember when it was Guitar Hero? Do you remember when you couldn't give away a wired Guitar Hero guitar to somebody?
Oh, that was kind of the portion of gaming history I just kind of skipped out on. But
okay.
I know that like those guitars are very cheap to buy.
Not now, I don't think.
Really? Are there? Well, I'm sure there's Oh God, there's got to be people or Guitar Hero people out there that just play Guitar Hero. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That's kind of that's absolutely a thing. So okay, hang on. There is something I was getting at. I don't remember.
You do that stuff, don't you? Don't you play a modded version of Guitar Hero?
Yeah, okay. So I did also just remember the other thing I was gonna say.
Oh, good.
So you were talking about like how you're 1 in 50 people, which like with how many people there are and how many people that play games. Like one example would be that every single person I know, whether or not they've played it, every single person knows what The Binding of Isaac is. You know, in my circle, you know what it is.
I know it's a game. I know that I've been attracted to that game specifically for the title because it has a cool title, and I've never sought it out beyond that. And it
Don't
blew
lie
my
to
mind.
me right now. What
blew
do
my
you
mind.
know about The Binding of Isaac?
That you have, what is it, 621 hours in it. That's about the extent of my knowledge.
Oh, I have 621 hours in one version of it.
Do you want to know what's even funnier about The Binding of Isaac? My perception of that game is going to be entirely different than yours, because the entire reason I remember the name The Binding of Isaac was because it came to me after I was trying to recall a dream I had about the time I saw the trailer for The Life of Pi.
Okay.
So that is what The Binding of Isaac is in the back of my head. Can you please enlighten me?
Well, anyway, what my original point was that if you went up to people on the street or you asked people who walked into a game store what The Binding of Isaac is, most of them probably haven't heard of it. Even though in my circle, it's the most popular video game that's ever been. You know what I mean? Not literally the most popular ever.
It skews your view, yeah.
Yeah. But wait, so you're asking me what it is?
Yes. Could you explain to me what Binding of... Is it I assume it's a platform because that seems to be your forte.
It is not. It is a roguelike stick shooter.
Oh, so thinking like Nuclear Throne?
Yes. All right. So take Nuclear Throne, right? But make it not suck. I'm just being a dick. All right, I'm just being a dick. All right. So let me explain it better. It is more like The Legend of Zelda, but like randomly generated. So you drop into a dungeon. It's top down. It's a square. It's there's like a tile of a floor as far as like there's rocks and holes and stuff, but they're all on a grid. There might be a door on the top, left, right, or bottom, right? It's a Zelda dungeon that has been randomly generated.
Would you call it retro-styled?
The new one is, and the old one isn't. The original one was a Flash game, actually.
Oh, okay.
So it had very smooth graphics, while the remake of it is pixel art.
I was gonna say, wait, hang on. It was a Flash game, and you're noting that it was very smooth in gameplay. That's no
not in
small
gameplay. Oh God, no. The brush strokes.
Oh.
You know the Flash brush stroke look, where everything's like real thick, inky lines that are vector graphics, so you can zoom really close on them and all that.
I know what vector graphics are.
Okay. Well, Flash is vector graphics, so everything is very smoothed out. But the frame rate was terrible. Flash could hardly run the game.
Yeah, awful.
So that's why, like, right when it got popular, they instantly remade it in a proper engine. So you drop into a Zelda-style dungeon where there's different rooms that go on a grid, and somewhere on the room. Oh, and you are a little boy who fights demons by shooting his tears. So he is a crying boy that fires projectile tears. And the very most important thing about the game, in my opinion, the very most important part of the design philosophy is that you can only fire in 4 directions, similar to Legend of Zelda. In your bow and arrow or shooting your sword.
Have you played Shock Troopers?
No.
It's I won't say it's super unique, but it's an arcade game. It's a SNK Neo Geo arcade game. I'm not sure if it was an SNK developed game, but either way, it's like that. It's where you're running and gunning like you can kind of consider it a shooter game, but you're running and gunning, like getting behind cover and going around, and you can shoot in different directions. I want to say that game had 8-way directional shooting though, but you're saying 4-way is important to the way that this game works.
Absolutely. So you go through the rooms and you fight monsters, right? And these monsters might, they all have real, like, so when you ask if it's retro style, and you're asking me, stupid hipster with my dumb definitions of the word, absolutely, because it's video game as shit when you're playing it. Like, all of the enemies have like these really distinct looks to them, so you really quickly like memorize the way that they behave, right? Here's a guy that just kind of wanders around and doesn't do anything, right? Here's a thing that floats there and it shoots at you. And that's important. It shoots at you, you know what I mean? Here's a thing that looks similar but a little bit different, and instead of shooting at you, it shoots a little fork that goes around you. So you get hit if you move, you know what I mean?
It's a zig or zag situation.
Right. And so, or there are enemies that like fire shots just in different patterns, right? And so all of these different enemies are just the way that you engage all of them. You just have to like really quickly visually identify that's that guy, here's what he does, and then you kind of have to know how you're going to move in order to take it down without getting hit, You
wouldn't call it a bullet hell, would you?
No.
Okay.
There are certain like bosses later in the game that fire a lot of projectiles and get a little bullet hellish, but I would not call it that overall.
Yeah.
Really, it's that you go into a room, there's like 5 enemies in it, some chase you down, some shoot at you, and you take them out, right? By shooting tears at them. Now, here's where it gets real good, though, is that normally you just shoot bloop, 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 you shoot shots, right? But there are like 500 different items in the game that you can collect that change your character. So some of them are just a damage upgrade. Some of them just increase your rate of fire. Some of them increase your speed, right? But then there's stuff like, there's an item that makes it so that now instead of shooting tears, you throw up a ball that explodes. And now that's your character. You do that now.
Let me ask, the story of the game, is it related at all to the biblical binding of Isaac?
Yeah, it's
because
like
you're just a little crying boy?
Yes, it's like a more modern take on it where you play as a boy named Isaac who, it's actually kind of weird to describe the story of the game without spoiling it because it's one of those things that it's like, well, it presents it to you this way, but the more you play it, the more you kind of figure out that it's actually this. You know what I mean? So what I'll just tell you the setup is that it's a boy who lives with a single mother. His single mother hears the voice of God telling her that she has to sacrifice him, and so he jumps into the basement to escape. And now the game starts and you're in the basement and your ultimate goal is to defeat Mom.
I get this. I remember this now, and that's why this seemed so familiar. Well, not this, but have you seen the game Little Nightmares, or at least Little Nightmares 2? I've only seen gameplay of 2. My friend Cole streamed it, and it is adorably, incredibly depressingly dark. But it seems to be that kind of vein where it's like, oh, something really scary and like traumatic is happening. Let's escape right now. It seems like that is kind of a similar theme.
Yeah, and you said the word adorable also, which that's a big thing with Edmund McMillan's art. He's the one who designed Isaac and did the visual design of it as well. And his whole thing is cute and gross, or cute and scary. And he's actually said like in interviews that it's almost sort of like a back and forth that he does with himself where he's designing something and he's like, this is too scary, make it cuter, or this is getting a little too gross, make it cuter, or this is too cute, make it grosser. But anyway, so yeah, a lot of stuff kind of has that vibe to it, right? But yeah, not to like spoil too much about where the story eventually goes, but it's really interesting the way that the game plays with its perception of religion, where a lot of people kind of hear what the game is about, and you would immediately assume the game is very anti-religious, because it's talking about a woman who thinks she hears the name of God, or the voice of God. The game doesn't say, he did this, really. It more sort of just says she heard the voice of God, and how do you interpret that, you know?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people might think that it's very anti-religious. This lady is trying to murder her child, right? But it turns out to be a lot more about Isaac's own perception of himself in the eyes of how he sees religion as a boy, right? And so a lot of what ends up happening in the game ends up being very back and forth. For example, let me tell you about like my favorite mechanic in the game, especially thematically, is that you get a chance sometimes to make a devil deal. Sometimes after you beat a boss, this devilish door opens up and you go in there and Satan is there, and he offers you the ability to trade in heart containers, permanent health, for powerful items. So you can literally make a deal with the devil in the game in order to get powerful shit that's very tempting in exchange for your soul or for your life. And the reason I say both is because the game has a mechanic called soul hearts that are kind of like armor. You know in Zelda how you've got so many heart containers, right?
Yeah.
Isaac also has blue hearts that get added on top of your maximum health, almost like armor. And when you lose them, they're just gone forever. They're not like So those are called soul hearts, and so devil deals might either be for red heart containers or for soul hearts. He can take part of your life, he can take your soul for these items that are tempting, right? Now, if you don't do it, though, if you see a devil deal and you don't do it, it unlocks the ability later in your run, after you fight another boss, you might get an angel room or a godly room. And in that room, you are given a powerful item for free. And it's just given to you.
So,
and there's... Yeah?
It's procedurally generated because it's a roguelike, right?
Yeah.
So it's really you wouldn't be able to predict what you need to do and when if you were doing another run, because it's always going to be different, right?
Yeah, it's sort of risk reward, but I love the thematic element that you have to resist temptation from Satan in order to unlock the godly room or the
angel
reward.
Room. Yeah.
And if you take a devil deal, that locks you out of angel rooms for the rest of the run. And the other thing, there's more nuance to it though. The devil deal is a selection. He gives you options, more than one choice, you know? And to tempt you with like, a little of this, little of that, while the angel room this is the item that you get, you know? And it's free, right? And so it's like it's that idea of how God has rules and he tells you how to be and how to live and all that. You know what I mean?
How weird would that be if we got that mechanic in like Mario? You know how in some levels if you get enough coins for, I think it's like you get enough coins for a bonus, you get to that slot machine room. You can just kind of gamble and see if you can get an item for the next round. What if you just didn't kill any Goombas one round? Or what if
right.
I wonder if someone could program... Well, Nintendo would shut it down the second someone makes something fantastic. That's just what they do. But, yeah, no...
Real quick.
Go ahead.
They did add later in angel rooms. I want to clear up in case anyone knows, about this game. They did add like choices into angel rooms later, and that kind of ruins that little thematic piece. But that's how it used to be.
They added choices, so you could choose.
Yeah,
different
like
items?
Now sometimes angel rooms have 2 items, and you get your choice of one of them. It takes away that little bit, That
little bit of
that I really liked.
Yeah. It sounds like it makes you follow an interesting thought process.
Yeah, and there is a lot of stuff in the game that that does ultimately point towards an interesting balance between the good and evil sides of the Bible and how both of them have an effect on Isaac, and ultimately it's about how these things influence him, rather than having any directly anti or pro-religious message.
Well, this spawned off of retro-styled games. Have you heard of... I go to this person a lot for retro styled games because they play the most out of anyone I know. But my friend Vegan Tyler started playing a game called, was it Loop Hero? Have you seen this
I've
yet?
I've heard of it.
So, from what I understand, it's a roguelike that essentially is like you start a loop in a small area and you move along in those directional, squares, tiles, whatever. And I think you start building like settlements somewhere or like buildings or something, and you have to keep going around the loop and you have to make choices in what to do where. And it eventually gets to the point where you have like this kind of cool little town. Graphically, the game is beautiful. If actually, it probably wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to get it running on something like a Super Nintendo. Now that I think about it, but it's that level of graphics. It's very pretty pixel art. Like I wouldn't say low res, but not like amazing like 1080p sprite work either. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those retro games where, well, it's not a retro game, but it's one of those games that's styled to be retro, has the look. I haven't seen a whole lot of gameplay, but it looks pretty low action. Like the you just see the black field and then the lit up areas where your movement has been from your loop, and then the playable area that you expand from there. That's the visible area for the majority of the time that I think the gameplay takes place. So it's like not graphically demanding. It's pretty pixel art. It's a roguelite because, procedural generation is not, I guess that's not what you'd call it here. It's mostly just the fact that no two runs are going to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting looking
game. So with that whole like idea of roguelikes and stuff, the thing that the ultimate like thing that I think gets most people coming back to Isaac for so many hours is the big thing, as I mentioned, like, so there's an item that turns your shots into puke, right? That explodes, and now that's just how it is. Or there's an item that makes you shoot 2 tiers at once in like a cross, right? Instead of I mean like 3 in like a fork, and that kind of thing. Now, if you get both of those, it does both.
Oh.
And so there's like all these different combinations of items that you end up getting that synergize with each other in interesting ways, So like on one run, you might be like, oh, now I shoot one shot that goes forward and it hits something and splits off into 2 and those split off, but all of them are also homing and then they explode at the end.
That sounds
and it's
fun
like
as hell, actually.
Yeah, like shit gets out of control on some runs where, like some runs kind of stay pretty basic, and those runs actually start to be really fun after you've played a lot of the game. At first, it's like you want the crazy shit, right? And then you start breaking the game, where it's like, now I hold down the fire button, and the screen is just flashing and lighting up, and everything's dead, and I can't even see my character anymore, but, like, everything's dead. Like, it gets fucked.
It's its own BFG.
When you break the game that hard, it's just fucked, right? And then once you've played, hundreds and hundreds of hours of it like me, then you start to appreciate the runs that don't get so crazy, where it's like, yeah, I'm just shooting the regular shots, but they're really fast and powerful now, and that's fun too, So yeah, overall, I have like over 2,000 hours of the game. If you include the Flash version and the remake and the fact that I've played the remake on PC and PS4 and Switch and Vita.
I didn't know it was even out that long.
Yeah, I want to say so when I first started Twitch streaming was about when it was just before Rebirth came out, which was the remake. And that would have been like, gosh, that would have been like 2014, I think.
You've been streaming for a while.
Yeah.
I just celebrated my 2-year stream anniversary, so it's pretty new to me. But, yeah. Retro-styled games, and we mostly talked about roguelikes, though, which are actually retro, because it started off with Rogue.
Right. Rogue is an extremely retro game, and definitely I think roguelikes are a game that I think or a style that I think a lot of people would think is pretty retro. Just because the nature of the games makes them pretty minimalistic as far as what actually happens in one run, and the fun comes from getting you to play the same thing over and over again. You know, instead of something like an open world game that's massive, oh, it's so many square miles, this map, and there's so many quests, you know. Like
that's
there's
what games
a game
used
like
to be.
well,
Not open world, but like you sit down and the fun is trying to do it over and over again, better or different.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, is that a lot of games nowadays have that they want to impress you with the scale, right? But roguelikes by nature are a lot more retro because it's the idea of you fire it up, you start a new game, you play through it, you say I had fun, and you're done, you know. And then maybe you do it again the next day, and that's exactly what Super Mario Bros. On NES is like.
So for people like me who are not well versed in roguelikes, what would you consider like a great intro to start with that kind of stuff?
Well, 100% The Binding of Isaac is great. If you don't like the art style, though, I know a lot of people aren't into the religious themes. They aren't into the cute, gross style and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think of Super Meat Boy when I think of that.
It's the same guy designed it.
Oh shit! Really? Okay, I
Yep.
didn't know that.
So yeah, Edmund McMillen. Were you a Newgrounds kid?
When I could find it on a mirror that wasn't blocked, yeah.
Oh yeah. So Ed McMillan started out making Newgrounds games, including the game just called Meat Boy was a Newgrounds game, and then yeah, Super Meat Boy was his first like thing that you would be like, yeah, it's an indie game,
Very retro style too.
So that game came out on the 360 was a huge deal, and his next. So the thing was though, Super Meat Boy was super successful. And he made The Binding of Isaac as like sort of a just like step back.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna literally his words when someone like in an interview was like, "What you working on now?" He was like, just some little piece of shit," you know. And then it came out, and oh my god, now it's even more popular.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I still haven't seen gameplay of it, but I imagine it's not like Super Meat Boy. It was like a crazy, fast-paced platformer with Ninja Gaiden style wall sliding and all that.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
Let's just say Meat Boy is to Mario what The Binding of Isaac is to Legend of Zelda. You know,
Totally
you'll
get
see
that,
it
yeah.
and you'll be like, "Oh, that's a lot like Zelda, except wow, it's crazy." You know?
Yeah, I can see that. So you go by like, we're talking like Game Boy Zelda, where you have like the squares system, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like it's a top-down view in
Yeah.
a dungeon, and you can see the tiles of the floor and stuff like that.
I don't know why I said that. I guess I'm just used to thinking about the Game Boy stuff. It's the same exact thing on the NES, right?
Yeah.
and
So-
SNES.
So as far as other roguelikes go, I mean, I don't think I'm the best person to ask because I don't love roguelikes in general. In fact, if you
Same.
tell me that a game is roguelike, I think I'm less inclined to like it originally, just because I think that a lot of the time randomization is used sort of more lazily than it is as actually good. Or maybe it's not even a lazy thing, but more it's just I generally enjoy when challenges are handcrafted, you know? When it's like, if I'm going to play a platformer, I want the designer to have sat down and thought about this spacing of these platforms exactly, you know?
I can see that, yeah.
A random one is kind of dumb. So I think that problem ends up happening in roguelikes a lot for me, where it's like, this doesn't feel like somebody crafted it, and so it's just all kind of... The idea of random is supposed to be that it's so exciting because it's different every time, but instead, because of its random nature, it's kind of always the same, you know?
And you get that with like Super Mario. The feeling that you can tell that it was sat down with.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when everything is random all the time, it just kind of makes it kind of all feel the same, ironically, you know?
Yeah.
So, but though, as far as roguelikes that I do really like, though, like Isaac, I think gets around that problem because the layout of the floor is randomized, what items you get are randomized, what enemies are in what rooms are randomized, right? But those rooms themselves, those are handcrafted. When you walk into a room, the layout of rocks, the spacing of the holes, what enemies can be in certain rooms, and the enemy behaviors themselves, those are things that are all rock solid, you know? And then you get into a boss fight, and the boss fight is, well, I guess that's all roguelikes also, that the boss fights are going to be designed, but you know what I mean, though. It's like each individual piece that you're playing in is handcrafted, and that makes a big difference for me. Other than that, though, like Rogue Legacy is a pretty good starting point.
That's
as far as
popular
like
one for sure, right?
Yeah. That one, it's like it's got a little bit of Castlevania to it, where it's like a platformer with melee combat. You know, Slay the Spire is fantastic.
I've heard
that
a
one
lot
I
of
would
people
super
love
recommend.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one is turn-based and deck building. So. So it's like each battle that you do in Slay the Spire is like an old school JRPG battle where it's like you're on the left, the enemies are on the right. It's turn based, right?
Darkest Dungeon, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But how it works though is it's almost got this like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone feel where you have so much energy every turn, and the different cards that you have cost different mana amounts, you know. And so you use your attack cards and your ability cards to take out the monsters. And then every battle, you get a set of like 3 cards that drops, and you choose the one you want, so you can kind of build a deck that combos, you know. Like, if you just take cards at random, the cards don't interact with each other, and you're going to get overpowered by the later levels, you know. But when you're like, I'm going to take the card that gives me a shitload of defense, and then I'm going to take the card that makes my defense not roll off every turn, and then I'm going to take the card that doubles my defense, right? And then I'm going to look for the card that makes it so that I deal damage based on my defense. Now you've got this, like, synergistic deck that just wails, you know what I mean? So yeah, Slay the Spire is awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, and this is kind of at a time where I was just learning what rogues are, or roguelikes are, or roguelites are. But
I kind of hate the term roguelite, but continue.
So I think of the game Transistor, but I don't know if that one's considered a rogue, is it? Or roguelike, rather.
From what I played of it, I don't think it was, but Hades is.
Hades
and that's made by the
is,
same
yeah,
people.
same people. I think Transistor followed a specific path for the story's sake.
Yeah, from what I played of it, it seemed like it did. But then again, wasn't Bastion randomized and Transistor was between those two?
Never. I don't think I've seen Bastion.
Okay.
But there's like games like Transistor, but we can. I mean, there's other. Fuck. I mean, with retro styled games, shoot 'em ups haven't really started to come back, as far as I can tell. There are still some games that you'll see come through East Asia Soft that you have to import. That'll be like some like Cotton is an old school shoot 'em up. I want to say. I think it's a shooter game.
Okay, yeah. When you said shoot 'em up originally, I was thinking you meant like stick shooters, and I was thinking, I feel like I see a new one every fucking day, dude.
Honestly,
but okay, yeah, you mean like shmups?
Yes, shmups, which I hate that term.
Oh yeah,
and only because it's just an ugly word. I just fucking hate it.
It is kind of an ugly word. Yeah,
it's like you were trying to make s'mores, but you fucked up real bad.
Oh sure, yeah.
You just made a shmup.
Shmup, dude.
But but you're right though. The fact that I said shoot 'em up, if I think about that, what comes to my mind is stuff like Shock Troopers, Ikari Warriors, stuff like that, or you're on the ground in a top-down environment, moving around and shooting that way. But I'm talking about shooters where it's just the spaceship that's either going horizontal or vertical. And, and you got it. Yeah, those haven't really seen as much of a resurgence as I would say beat 'em ups have. Like beat 'em ups. I think I watched you play the new Battletoads. A
little bit, yeah.
So there's the new Battletoads. There's Streets of Rage 4, and then there is the River City Ransom series coming back as River City Girls. And honestly, I haven't played Streets of Rage 4 yet. I haven't played Battletoads yet, although I will if I can get a copy. But River City Girls is a fantastic game. I recommend it.
It looks great.
Yeah, I recommend everyone go. Me and my friend Nikki streamed it. We co-op streamed it. It took us. I heard the complaint that the game is not very long. Like it's about 8 to 10 hours, which for me is way sufficient. But
yeah, that's great. That's a great length.
Yeah. But we took a little bit longer. So if someone else beat it really quick, I can kind of understand them not liking it as much. But we took a bit longer because we were definitely blasted some of the nights that we were playing it. Mm-hmm. But we were still getting through the bosses, and the bosses were actually fairly challenging. I would say you'd have a good time, and you have to figure out puzzles about certain levels. Like, oh, we couldn't go there because we didn't open this dumpster up over here to get the item that one character told us about. You have to pay attention to the dialogue. There's actual story that goes with it. It's very, very good for a beat 'em up game. But retro, like if I was gonna play River City Girls, depending, I guess, on what game it is and how popular it is, like maybe Battletoads, I would say that I'm streaming Battletoads. But with like River City Girls or Streets of Rage 4, you'd probably find a better audience streaming to the retro crowd. Again, for the audience listening, we are streamers, so this is our perspective. Most people don't think in terms of, oh, I'm going to stream this, but what would I consider it to get the most amount of people interested in case they are searching for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's also something with saying like, oh, 8 to 10 hours, that sounds great, because as a streamer, a lot of the time, if you can get a game done in 2 days, that's like really,
lightning speed.
and it's nice because you got so much shit to get to.
I mean, it's the basic principle of it will take you 3 times as well, it'll take me 3 times as long to speak out a book I'm reading versus just reading it in my head. Same principle with video games. I'm actually talking to chat about what's going on. I am narrating lines that didn't get voiced in game, so audio-only lurkers can, be included in the experience. I'm commenting on all this shit that's happening. This is stupid. Why did they put this here? This is a fantastic idea. I wish more games did this. That takes up a lot more time. So an 8 to 10 hour game for us is like 20 hours.
And some of it too is scheduling as well. You like if I were to on a day that I don't stream, right? Let's say I'm interested enough in a game to be like playing it all day. I can stop work at 5 and get into it, right, and then quit at like midnight, but streaming, you've got a schedule that you've only got this many hours and this many days a week to do it. So that ends up limiting your amount of time also.
Talking about me being 1 in 50 gamers, about 1 in 50 listeners here is actually a streamer that would understand what we're talking about. But when you never mind, I'm not going to ask that. Mostly because I forgot my train of thought. But what I was going to say was, if I'm thinking about it in terms of like a listener's perspective, what we're talking about is like the argument that you'd get in with your friend Friday night over for beer or something. Is like, this game's not old. Like, it's like, man, what the fuck are you talking about? That game is like 10 years old. It's like, yeah, but it's fantastic. It's like, okay, yeah, it's fantastic, but it's old. This is the kind of conversation that's kind of probably going to apply to you. Is like, why the fuck would anyone care about... Why the fuck would anyone care about if I called by name this one Crash Bandicoot game on the Wii that I can't even remember the full name of, because no one's going to actually actively seek that out, versus just streaming in the retro category, which, even though I don't think Wii is retro fully anyway, it's going to definitely net more people interested in seeing what the fuck is going on, because more people in the retro category are going to go, oh, I love Crash Bandicoot. This game looks weird. So
if we're still talking about that, I got one more stupid, out there, abstract, hipster definition of retro, which is also the way that you play it. Very similar to the game just being put the game in and play it. There's also an aspect of that as far as the player goes. Retro can also mean what used to be called a blind playthrough, but we're not allowed to say that anymore.
We aren't?
I'm just joking. But they removed the blind tag on Twitch.
Did they?
Yeah. Blind playthrough used to be a tag you could put on your stream on Twitch, but they took it out because it was insensitive to people who were visually impaired. I'm not fucking with you right now.
Moving on, but I remember using that tag, and I guess I just haven't seen it in a while. I guess that's why. I mean, so I thought there would have been a distinction between, like, blind playthrough, which means playing through a game streaming a game that you've never played through. And, of course, you're going to ask for no spoilers or anything like that. And then there's also people who literally play games blindfolded.
Well, blindfolded is different from blind.
It has
right?
its own separate tag. Yeah.
Everyone knows what blind means. It means quite a bit, you know. It means you don't know anything about the game going in, and you don't plan to, like, look anything up. You don't want people to tell you things about it or, like, spoil game mechanics. Because one huge distinction to make, and this for me is that, like, when people hear the word spoiler, a lot of the time they assume that it only means story, right? But game mechanic spoilers, with me, and this is kind of also looping back to what I'm saying about being a retro player and retro gaming being like a way that you play games. To me, the game mechanic spoiler is worse.
Absolutely.
Because like going into a game not knowing anything about it, you're not going to look anything up about it, and that kind of thing is like an old school way to play games, like from back before there even was an internet to just look everything up on. And yeah, like it's a huge thing for me where, like, I don't need to get into why game mechanic spoilers are so bad and why I think that they're worse. It's just, my point is that's retro, is to see it that way.
To see that mechanics can be spoiled as well, and that can ruin your enjoyment of a game.
Yes.
Yeah, because, like, a characteristic of older games is that they tend to not hold your hand as much. And if I just started, say, an action RPG, and I walked up to a stone with a sword in it, and I go, "Oh, look, cool, classic, like, Camelot trope, neat, cool to see in a game." It's like, and if someone in my chat goes, "Hey, dude, you can use that weapon," and I go, "What?" And they go, "Yeah, it's like a secret in the game or something. Just like walk up to it, click R3, and then square triangle, and you'll pick it right out. Like if you just hit X and interact with it and not pull it out, because it's a sword and a stone. You're not supposed to be able to pull it out. You can pull it out with this button combo." It's like, dude, you just like made me like what's the word for a character that's way too high level for an area that he's in? It's like, wow, you just
overpowered.
You just made me overpowered from an item, and now I know that there's a way to secretly interact with an item or something like that.
The second thing you just said is way more important to me.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like the whole mechanic of something is now something you didn't learn based on something that the game wrote in for you to learn it that way.
Right, exactly. You've learned that there's a way to interact with things too early, and also it also sort of in some cases it might even have the opposite effect, where it sort of teaches the play. When you miss that very important aha moment in a game where you figure out what you're supposed to do because someone just told you, it might train you to not even be in the mindset to
look
find
for
that kind of thing anymore. Yeah. So then you're just going to get stuck on the next thing, because you're not like learning. And then the other thing too is we're again, like from the streaming perspective, right, is have some respect for the other viewers as well.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to watch someone play a game and defeat it, or do you want to watch someone get told how to beat the game by someone else the whole time? Someone else that you don't know,
Yeah, you
like,
want to be there for the minute the entire chat lights up like, "God damn it, you're an idiot. You took 5 minutes to learn this, and everyone's so happy now that you figured out something."
Right. It's like, I enjoy this person, and I enjoy watching them play games, right? So I go to their channel to watch them play a game. But now if there's some other dude that I've never heard of just telling him how to play it, that's not what I'm there for. I don't care about that guy. He can go play his own game. And I am, as a viewer, am now bored. and and when you spoil game mechanics, you're lessening the value of the show, and making it less entertaining for everybody else.
Yeah, I 100% can see that, because I actually came at it from the opposite perspective. I'm the kind of person right now who I just have way too many video games for my own good, that I kind of don't want to spend 50 hours, literally all of which are on stream, getting through Final Fantasy V with another game. So I'm the kind of person who is like, as long as you don't spoil the story for me, because that's kind of what a JRPG is entirely for, as long as you don't spoil the story, then, sure, drop me a hint here or there. I'll go to a secret area there, because there's some things in these, especially older games, retro games, that you would never, ever know to do that. Like, the game doesn't train you to look for that sort of thing. It's just secrets. And maybe those secrets are game breaking. I prefer they not to be, but like, I genuinely don't care about anything that doesn't spoil what to me is the core experience that I can enjoy.
Yeah. So, first of all, I respect that. And if you're asking for a hint, get it,
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
That's fine, right? However, oh shit, losing it. I had to put the other thing up front. So the thing about old games having things in them that you would never find out, I think I have found to be not as true as I used to think. And because a lot of people think that, retro games, they just made them hard just to extend the length of them. You're not supposed to figure it out. You're supposed to, that kind of thing. You're supposed to just spend hours on it just to make the game longer. All that is bullshit. So let's take, let's take the biggest example of all time that everyone knows about as far as like bullshit in a retro puzzle, which is the crouching in Castlevania 2 in front of a wall until a tornado comes and takes you away.
Mm-hmm.
Can we agree that that's probably the most bullshit moment in any game of all time for you to try to have to figure out?
That I've played.
That we've played. All right.
Yeah.
So here's the deal with that, though. In Castlevania 1, you have to crouch to reveal secrets. This is already a thing. And you might not have ever known that. Well, there is a specific spot in Castlevania 1. In that game, if you drop far enough, the character crouches for a moment when he hits the ground. As like a, oof, I just hit the ground.
Yeah.
And there are spots in the game where if you walk off a certain ledge and drop onto a spot, the character will do the oof crouch, and it'll reveal a secret. So that mechanic gets revealed to you accidentally on purpose. You like that? Accidentally on purpose? That should be the name of the podcast. So that mechanic gets revealed to you accidentally on purpose. They've designed it. So now you know as a player, crouching reveals secrets in Castlevania 1. And you take that into Castlevania 2, there's a spot earlier in the game where they make you crouch in order to reveal something at a different point as well. I think maybe that part I'm wrong about. But either way, the point is, it is led up to. Is it bullshit? Yeah, it's still bullshit. That's why we're talking about the worst thing ever. But the point is that, like, there is a logical sequence that you're supposed to go through in order to get to that spot. And I think most games have it.
There's a ghost. So in the beginning of the game, I think that's the first time it's revealed to you that you have to go up to the shore and then crouch, and then I think it initiates something, and then a boat comes across the waterway for you to jump on, and then it goes across like a normal platforming game. That there was bullshit enough to have to find out anyway, because it didn't tell you about that. And I think in the Japanese version it does, because it's not mistranslated like we got. It does if you know how to read the riddles of the lies and truths of the townspeople. But that was the only time in the game that you would ever do that. At no other point in the game, including the areas where there are swamp Because once you get to the point where you have to progress the game by doing the crouch thing, you've already unlocked a bunch of different area that you can go in the game. So you're left guessing at different parts of the map. Not even anywhere near what it is, let alone what the mechanic would be to get to it. So you're thinking there's actual just gameplay that you haven't gotten to yet. Maybe there's a castle you haven't gotten a piece of Dracula out of yet. Yeah, it's bullshit because I don't think even once it really kind of, in the American version, ever told you what you need to do.
Yeah, the thing that I saw that reminded me of it was like someone tells you to like hit your head on something, which is like a really dumb way to tell you to crouch against a wall. But it's there, crouching against a wall. The game says hit your head on this thing. So anyway, though, the point is that is like the most bullshit example of all time of a puzzle like that in a game, and there is a debate to say about it, about whether or not you can reasonably be expected to figure it out. And so my point is that almost everything else is better than that,
Yeah, definitely.
Where if you have the right mindset and you think about it well enough, you can figure stuff out. So recently I played through the second quest of The Legend of Zelda on NES. After you beat Zelda on NES, there's a New Game Plus, and it's totally different. It's the same world map, but everything's moved around on it, and then the dungeons are all new. And there's new mechanics. And that had some of the hardest secrets I've ever played on it.
In a Zelda game.
But, like, you just have to... Like, I'll give you, this is a little bit of a mechanical spoiler if this is something that you want to play in the future.
Wait, which game?
The Legend of Zelda for NES. I'm talking second quest here.
I do plan on starting with that exact game as soon as I finish
I will not spoil the mechanics then. All I will say, though, is that as long as you have the right mindset, when you just think about things like, this is an NES game, right? So what am I reasonably trying to accomplish? And what tools and controls do I reasonably have in order to accomplish something, And when you, like, really narrow it down so much to, like, what are the possible even things you can do in this game, you can figure out some pretty cryptic secrets.
That's a little exclusionary, though, don't you? Like, I mean, like, what percentage of people understand video games enough to where breaking the desire for illusion is a regular problem, where they just know how video games work, they know how to program games, or they at least kind of have some kind of theory, and they can just kind of see the wireframes, quote unquote, in video games. That's like, for an NES, it's like, okay, well, I've got an 8-bit graphic game. What are my tools? Like, I don't think anyone who had an NES at the time was probably thinking any of that.
I don't know. It's hard to say, because when we had NESs and it was the only thing that we had, we were 8. So yeah, of course, with
a lot more time too.
Of course, a tiny little kid it is just going to stumble upon the secrets accidentally, just being kids. When you're an adult, though, I mean, come on, you can think about it. Where it's like, well, it's really hard to imagine that perspective, but okay, so the issue is right now, if you go back and play an NES game, you might overestimate it, as far as does the game want me to walk in this really specific sequence to lay out this fucking Morse code, or you might like overestimate the complexity of the problem because you've played newer games,
True.
But when the NES is the most complicated thing, and so all of the things that you can do to interact are all new, then let me give you an example. Not as big of a problem.
Let me give you an example of something like that in fighting games. Little bit newer tech, because we're talking about the 16, 24-bit era of arcade fighting games. Akuma. Akuma is the dark secret character of, I forget which Street Fighter he came in on, but he requires a special button combo to select in the menu. And as a player, it's probably going to take you, without any hints from the company or anything like reading outside. You also have to consider how many people had the internet at this time. How the hell do I know, as a player, that in order to play this exact character, a fully playable character in the game, I need to go in the menu, I need to start from the second character slot, and then I'm going to hover over... from E Honda, I need to hover over to Chun-Li. From Chun-Li, I need to hover over to Guile. I can't remember if this is the exact order. From Guile to Bison, and then back to like Ryu or something, and then you hold it there for 3 seconds, and then hit select start, and then like all 3 like punch buttons or something like that, and then the portrait will change, and you will get that character. It's like, who the fuck is figuring that out?
Yeah,
but people
something
did
like that. So something like that though is an Easter egg. That's different.
Oh yeah,
that's
it's that core
not,
mechanic.
Yeah, that's not progression. But yeah, I love that kind of thing, because it's like, until you got to the end where it's like a ridiculous button combination, it is just a thing that's going to be like, someone is going to do this accidentally at some point, and the rumor will spread from there,
Yeah, you're right.
Or it'll just be, the employees know about it and the rumor spread from them.
Especially with fighting games back then, too, because that's where everyone's gathered around in the arcades. Urban legends are going to just go like wildfire.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that kind of stuff is really cool. Of course, now it would just get data mined out,
Oh,
it wouldn't be very retro of you to just data mine it
Dude,
out.
exactly. Like, no one back in the day was like, hey, my dad's uncle is a journalist, and he actually caught a leak from a back meeting in Nintendo. And then you're just going to sound like that kid on the playground, like, my dad says Nintendo's going to release this game next month. You should believe me. Therefore, give me playground clout. It's not like that, but like, they weren't just going to get like data mined. There was no way to do that. There was just like, you had to have insider information for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just the only way to do it, I guess. Well, I mean, fuck, I guess short from hooking your SNES up to a supercomputer that, crunches all the inputs in at one time and mathematically eliminates what doesn't work over like a period of a month or something. I wouldn't know how else you'd do it other than just word of mouth.
Yeah, totally. So, I think we bullshat perhaps too long on the subject. Should we, we probably shouldn't go too much longer. I'm thinking, would you like to discuss a game that you have been playing this week?
Let's see. I've gone... I just did a streamiversary thing, so what I did was I just grabbed a bunch of games that were in my backlog and played them because I knew I wasn't going to get to them if I just waited.
I mean, I don't even necessarily mean this week. I just mean like... what's on your mind?
I have a bunch of different games that I could talk about. Depends on how much you want to bullshit, but key highlights, fishing games have gotten worse.
Oh yeah?
They have not gotten any better over time. I don't know how many different fishing games you've played. I am not a veteran of fishing games, but I am a big fan of Natsume's Reel fishing series. Reel being spelled Reel. I loved it on PS1, and I didn't understand, how games worked back then, but as an adult I recognize it now. It's essentially a interactable FMV game. Which I guess, are interactable, but this is a little bit more so because you're actually casting in a certain area where fish will be or won't be. And then when there's a hint that you may get a bite on a fish, it switches to a 2D underwater picture, like really a flowing stream kind of sorts, where the fish and your hook are fighting, and you got to hook them and then reel them in, and it's like there's a picture of like what looks like the picture that they take to put in the back of a fish tank at like a PetSmart or something.
And real quick, this is a PS1 game?
This is a PS1 game.
Okay.
So you get sprites and you get FMV environments. And it turns out, even though they're highly compressed video, it's still a damn relaxing game because there's this nice, really acoustic guitar track played over it. So I played Real Fishing 2 because I played Real Fishing 1 before. Real Fishing 2 added 3D fish interaction, which is really nice because it's utilizing the PS1. So it's not just a 2D sprite system anymore. But they got rid of that key moment that everyone in fishing loves, which is when the fish first breaches the surface of the water while you're reeling them in. They got rid of that. And I figured, missed opportunity, you got all these 3D graphics. It would have been great. But it goes back to the FMV environment, 2D, obviously just video playing. And it was like, okay, cool. And then I played, for the Switch, a game I got from someone at East Asia Soft. Real Fishing Road Trip Adventure. And boy, did that change. I don't know how many listeners to this care about fishing games, but if you like fishing, you like the relaxing environment, you like the gameplay of, you just like the meditative action of casting and reeling in. And then maybe something exciting will happen. Take that and now slap Persona into it. They made that fishing game I described less good by giving it better graphics, 3D environments that you can look around, and literally like anime characters. There's like this plot that they put over it.
And can you romance them? Do you have to pick the best girl?
I'm waiting to get to that part. So far, it's two dudes and one guy on a road trip. It's one nerdy guy, one kind of jockey guy. He does all the fishing. His name's Sean. He's kind of an asshole. I don't like him. But at the same time, none of the characters manage to be interesting at all. It gets this amazing graphical text box display, like of all the crazy comic book shading and the off geometric shapes from the central square, all the dialogue that's going on. Well drawn, very well drawn, like anime characters, and all of them are just like their lines are like they read out of a PBS Kids show. There's no character development. There's just one's nerdy, one's the girl, and then one's the jockey kind of guy, and they're on a road trip to fish in different spots.
Anime thing is really not that surprising because Natsume is the Harvest Moon developers
They
also,
are.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's so weird because like I know Real Fishing as an actual it's hard to call it, it's hard to know whether or not I'd call it a sim because fishing simulation is, it's always been in a weird state. Dreamcast probably had it best with that controller. But Real Fishing is like an FMV, relaxation kind of game. And then they just felt the need to add plot to it that didn't manage to ever justify itself being there to waste your time.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds a lot like Harvest Moon, where those games were about farming, and then the later you go, the more it starts to be about the interaction with the other villagers and who are you going to marry and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like, I guess it gets a little bit more Animal Crossing-esque. I'm not an Animal Crossing person, so I wouldn't really know. But I know Animal Crossing, there's a lot of character-to-character interactions.
Mm-hmm. So you're telling me though that Real Fishing they added persona like social link kind of things, but it's not a harem for you to choose the greatest.
I haven't gotten as far into it yet to really make the judgment call.
That's a little disappointing.
There's not as far as I can tell. There's no romancing options. There's just there's also an old dude who runs a tackle store. Who's
that sounds a little better.
Who's very Professor Elm-ish from like third gen Pokemon.
Gotcha.
He's just like, oh yes, I'm also the town tackle salesman. I run the general store. And then like you go to a different town and he's like, oh yeah, I've got a store over here. I just decided to come over. Welcome. How you doing? Kind of like how they have like the Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny in every single town with Pokemon. I haven't played Persona yet. I'm just going off of like what the character interactions look like, and it's very much like that. And then you get to the gameplay, and I swear to God, if you told me I was playing a fishing minigame portion of My Summer Car, I would not know the difference. because like there's nothing
Okay.
anime about the actual gameplay. It's just a white dude with no hair on his wrist with a watch and a hand and a reel. That's all it is. And then there's anime like in the background. Like it's very bizarre.
That's what's funny about the idea of a fishing game is I've never played a fishing game, but I've fished in a lot of games, and it's
That's
always
interesting.
pretty fun. Like, well, you know what I mean? I've done some fishing in World of Warcraft. I've done some fishing in Persona 4. I was fishing in Valheim earlier today. I've done some fucking...
I like the
what's that
Valheim
other
fishing.
one? Yeah, I've fished in a lot of games.
Zelda for sure. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Shenmue 3 right now. I want to fish really bad, but I'm perpetually broke from trying to buy food so I can have HP. So I haven't
real
done
quick
that
then,
yet.
what games got the best fishing
So
that you've played?
um
And if your answer is real fishing, then I want to know the second best.
so little about me. I'm not an angler. I come from a family of one. I don't like fishing in real life. I find it relaxing, but it's not. I hated doing it as a kid, but I grew to love the games because they are good, relaxing, and exciting. If I had to say the best fishing game,
Well, more specifically,
Or
I
just
guess I really
fishing
want to know
experience.
what not fishing game has the best fishing mini game. That's really what I'm getting.
Valheim would be perfect if the fish.
Valheim's got like the worst fishing. Okay, sorry.
Hang on,
Maybe
hang
you were
on.
going into
It would be perfect if the fish didn't act like inanimate objects that are on a scripted movement path, and they actually took and ran with your bait and just were actually very active. And otherwise, like I'm just saying, the environment of fishing in Valheim, gorgeous, insanely relaxing, and the casting system works really well.
love Valheim overall. The fishing though, yeah, it's like if you look at what the fish do, it's like they're just zooming around, and when they happen to zoom under your bobber, you hit the reel.
Yeah, you start reeling it in, yeah.
And then you just hold reel while it slowly comes at you, and if you have enough stamina, you get it.
Yep.
And that's the whole fishing mini game of that game.
Yeah, it's not deep at all, but
It's not a great fishing mini
But
game.
my comparison is something like the next thing I think about is fishing in Pokemon, which is activate rod, enter fish, and then you hope you're in the right spot to get something.
Oh yeah, you just
wait.
use the rod, hit your bong. When you come back, oh, there's your Magikarp.
I haven't done that yet, but yeah, I'd imagine that's probably what you would do. And yeah, here's your Magikarp. Enjoy that for another 50 Pokemon encounters, you dickhead. Like maybe you'll get a shiny one. You probably won't though. Especially if you're playing the early games that didn't have that. But like, yeah, it's a way more interactive experience compared to like Pokemon. If I'm thinking about other fishing, I think I remember fishing a lot in World of Warcraft and liking it. It's not something that I did very often or wanted to do, because the waters in that game were always so boring. It's just one single flat texture with a movement piece of water on it. There's nothing. If I'm gonna want to play a fishing game, it's because I want to be in a relaxing, like pretty kind of looking environment, or just like a otherworldly looking environment, even. Which, oh man, I could say some Valheim spoilers, but I won't. But yeah.
Well, I was gonna say that does kind of go back to Valheim, where it's like sometimes you're standing on a rock fishing, and then suddenly like this big wave washes over the rock, and oh shit, now I'm swimming in the wave. And then I come, and then I come back down onto the rock, and it's like, holy shit, this is what the ocean is like. If you've ever like swam in the ocean with the huge waves and shit, it's and where like a wave is coming and you have to like jump with it, and you go, and then you
the
come
taller
back,
the
like
waves are, the more fatigued you are. Yeah.
so then that kind of like feeling getting into that certainly makes me appreciate.
And with
when
Valheim,
I think about it that way,
yeah,
it makes me appreciate Valheim's fishing a lot more.
And with Valheim, you can take a boat out and go and find places to fish. You can follow the fish in the water.
So I'm from Minnesota, right? Mm-hmm. The land of 10,000 lakes, they say. And that's a huge pastime for a lot of people here. You know, my sister lives on a lake, and when you're there, there's just all kinds of boats all over the lake of just you're sitting there, right, on your beach, and here's a boat floating by with 3 people on it with their lines out, and they, hey there, we're not really that Canadian, but,
You're more Canadian than some Canadians, for sure, though.
But yeah, the boats floating by, and they're just fishing, and they wave to you, and you wave back to them, and all right, and that's it. And I've never done that, though. I'm not actually a boat person or a lake person myself.
I want to be. That's my problem.
So I've never done that myself, but the other day in Valheim, that's exactly what we did. Me and Nicole got into the long boat, and we went sailing down the shore. Hey, there's some fish over there, and plopped the anchor down and fucking sat there and fished. It was, it was a nice relaxing time.
Fun as shit, yeah. It's great. And it's fun.
And
it's
the
so
fish
funny.
are good in that game too.
Yeah.
Not to get into let's not get too into Valheim here, but bro, if you guys aren't catching fish and cooking them, get on it. They're real good.
The meat's
especially
way
when
better.
you find the serpent meat and the serpent stew. You know what I'm talking about?
I didn't want to spoil it, but
that's all I'm saying.
Well, there's
I'm saying is serpent stew, baby.
I did something I don't think even you have done.
Okay.
Because Valheim is exactly what you were talking about for me. I have more fun just dicking around and sailing and exploring than I do doing the main quests and all that stuff. And I was saying I've fished in some I've been in some very otherworldly waters that I don't want to spoil for anyone who's playing Valheim.
Yeah, so
now.
give me only a yes or no answer right now. Yeah. Is what you were gonna say basically that you've sailed to the edge of the world?
I have seen the edge of the world, and I got my answer.
Yes or no question.
I got my answer. I'm not telling anyone because it would ruin it for everyone.
Well, I only that's why I'm asking a yes or no question. Because, what happened was I loaded up your Discord. I saw a message from you that said something like, I did it, guys, or something, with a screenshot of a Valheim map. Yeah. And I was like, nope, and I clicked right out of there before I looked at it because I didn't want any spoilers.
It was just showing the map. Well, okay, never mind. Go ahead.
What I gathered was that what I think I gathered was that you sailed to the edge of the world.
I did. I have seen things.
Cool. Can't wait.
The fishing's great. But if
great game.
What's another? Okay, so you haven't played fishing games. They definitely got their best around the PS1 era. I played on Sega Genesis a Bass. I think it's like Bassmasters Pro Classic or something. It's actually kind of cool because you get a map of a lake, and you know how asteroids on Windows used to, or arcade controls, like you have your forward momentum because it's space, right? It kind of was like that, except you're in a boat. So you have boat turning physics. Other than
boats are kind of like space.
They're kind of like space in one dimension. But if you have, that's like you choose where in a lake you want to fish. You choose the type of lure. These are all just menu click things. You click through your menu of bait, type of reel, where you are on the lake, and then it's kind of like the Game Boy type of fishing. You cast, except maybe this one gives you a little bit of a meter for your power, kind of like how golfing will have for your distance and your throw, and then you just reel in, and then that's it. And there wasn't really like a whole lot of action. It would show you a cool looking sprite of the fish that you would catch, but it's a picture of a fish. There's not like any action going on. That was on Sega Genesis. So one generation later, on PS1, we're rocking full motion video. And I remember my mind being blown because I was like, it was about 10 years later after I played these PS1 games in a mall. The mall kiosks were selling these like waterfall, rapid, just moving water brook photos that seemed to have movement on them because the lighting behind them is casting shadows in a way that made it look like the water was flowing, and it played like a soundtrack of like a looping, a stream. Yeah. I was mind blown because I was like, that's that shit I used to fish in. And then I learned, it looked so pretty because it was just, I mean, pretty relatively speaking, because it's really, like it's not fragmented, but it's like you can see the compression in the video of the FMV file that you're watching. You weren't seeing
like artifacts.
Yeah, exactly, compression artifacts. You weren't seeing like polygons being rendered. You weren't seeing like even sprites happening. All you see is one little line that is your rod and a string that goes to it, which is your line, and you cast it, and then it has like a little bit of a movement animation sprite of where it's moving through the water, and you can move the rod up and down the bottom of the level, kind of like a pong paddle, and that'll determine where you kind of drag and where you're reeling in towards. But I was like, what the fuck? These graphics are amazing. And it just reminds me of the time I got fooled by that as a kid with Power Rangers. You remember that? Power Rangers? That was like a futuristic game for the Super Nintendo because it was playing actual clips of combat from the TV show in the game based on choices.
On Super Nintendo?
On Super Nintendo. That you just choose based off of options in the game. And I was like, how is the Super Nintendo doing this? This is the most amazing graphics I've ever seen. But yeah.
Yeah. Funny story about that. So I've never played that because I wasn't like a Power Rangers kid. But I remember when Mortal Kombat came out. My brother has said the same thing, where it's like when Mortal Kombat came out, it was like we couldn't imagine that graphics could get any better than that.
Oh yeah.
Because they were just real. They were just real people. They were just pictures of real people. How could it can't possibly get better than that? So
it can get better, actually. There's a game
That's just a funny aside.
There's a game called Tattoo Assassins that basically it's pictures of people from that same period with actual fatalities in the game. But also, like, everyone's like a weird tattooed character, and their ink gives them certain powers. It's this weird, bizarre B movie, like, honestly, probably like C remake of a B movie, spin-off of Mortal Kombat. Not officially from them at all, but like,
right,
it got better graphically in ways that arguably could be interpreted as worse, but people did that. Yeah, it's like they took pictures and made that the animation rather than sprites like Street Fighter was doing at the time. And I think that's what kind of made me a huge Mortal Kombat fan as a kid, because it was so graphic.
Yeah, the aesthetic of Mortal Kombat was really great. I mean, like I love how Street Fighter looks, and like if you're gonna give me the choice, I want a game that has drawn sprites and stuff, rather than
I agree.
digitized photographs. But, for what it is, I'm really glad that the digitized photo stuff is out there because it looks really charming in its own way.
Oh, it's very charming. And they used that for like up until like the PS2, like the 3D era.
Yeah.
Like they even used it in the shitty action adventure, Mortal Kombat, Mythologies Sub-Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have that for
rough.
N64.
You have an N64?
Yeah, so I bought it for N64 and then later learned that it's on PS1, so I haven't played it yet because I'm going to get the PS1 version instead.
I didn't even know it came on N64.
Yeah, it probably sucks. As in, like, I'm sure like the sound is terrible, and if there's FMV on the PlayStation version, it's probably not on the.
Oh yeah, it's just missing
on the N64 version, or it'll be like super compressed. Like Resident Evil 2 actually did have the FMV in it.
That's a good point.
On
actually,
N64.
You would not want to do that because they're like. I think the death scenes are actually FMV in that game.
Okay, yeah.
So you'd be missing really key important stuff.
Right. Like Resident Evil 2 was ported to N64, and they did keep the FMV, but it's like half resolution,
Yeah.
half frame rates, and stuff to get it to actually fit on the cartridge.
Oof, but also I understand it. It's better to have it there.
Speaking of old school FMV on PS1, did you know that the first Twisted Metal game actually had FMV recorded for all of the different endings? But
No, but I think I think most cutscenes were FMV on PS1. Like in general.
Right, but so Twisted Metal 1 didn't have any though. And whenever you beat the game, it just gave you like scrolling text to tell you what the ending was, and it's super lame.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, they actually recorded FMV endings for all of the endings, but I don't know if they just didn't have time to fit it onto the disc, or if it just didn't fit or something. I don't know why.
Was it a launch game?
For some reason. Say again?
Was it a launch game? Twisted Metal?
It was early at the very least. I don't know if it was an actual launch game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If it was a launch game, I could understand because, you want to launch with a console.
Right. Exactly. So, if you didn't know that, though, go look it up on, you can find them on YouTube, the original Twisted Metal endings. It's pretty great.
Is Axel in the first game?
No, he was introduced in 2, I think.
Then 2 is one I only care about.
Or was he?
I think he was in the first one.
Yeah, he was introduced in 2.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not positive.
Because I remember playing the first one and distinctively going, this is way shittier than the Twisted Metal 3 demo disc I have.
Well, Twisted Metal 2 is also shitty if you play it now.
Okay.
So, it's a hot take, but Twisted Metal 2 is a shit game nowadays. It's like unplayable.
I just had an amazing. I was thinking about it, and I was just like, Twisted Metal games in general are probably pretty shitty, and I don't even know if you could make them good nowadays. And then I thought, oh my god,
they tried.
Add combat to Rocket League.
Well, you know that there was a Twisted Metal game for PS3. They rebooted the franchise.
Twisted Metal Black, is that it?
No, that was the PS2 one. On PS3, there's a game just called Twisted Metal, and it's like a full-on reboot. Here's the deal, though. So, Twisted Metal on PS1, it's shit. Don't play it. However, there was another car combat game called Vigilante 8.
Oh, Vigilante.
For the PS1.
Okay, yeah.
That game kicks ass. It totally holds up. It's real good, and I would recommend it as a game to play.
Have you ever seen
Vigilante 8?
Have you ever seen Ghost Rider, the movie with Nicolas Cage?
No.
Oh, I recommend it.
I know about it though.
I highly recommend it. If you need if a problem in your life is a girl with a tribal tramp stamp tattoo, this is probably a movie that you would genuinely enjoy. I would say
the thing that
go ahead.
Oh, just what we talked about before, where I don't really watch movies, but I do watch criticisms of them. I've seen reviews of Ghost Rider, but I've not seen the movie.
The movie is fantastic in every way that you would want a Nicolas Cage movie to be good.
Yeah,
and
I understand it's got Nick Cage eating M&Ms out of a wine glass, and the bad guy is named Blackheart. And there's a scene where he just screams at the camera for no reason in the middle of the wilderness for some reason.
Okay, so you might have a general idea of the kind of character Ghost Rider is. I want that origin story of Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal. I want real Sweet. I want to know why Sweet Tooth, very influential picture in advertising for the Sony systems and shit all around that time. Twisted Metal was huge. I don't think we ever really got an origin story aside from the really weird intro text that certain characters will have. How are you going to explain a dude who's in this competition holding his car together by his biceps and shit?
You didn't play Twisted Metal Black?
I didn't play Black, no.
So Twisted Metal was a huge series for me when I was younger because my dad doesn't play games at all. My mom 100% doesn't play video games. Nor does my sister, nor does my dad. It's really just me and my brother. But my dad did play Twisted Metal with us. So I played a lot of Twisted Metal when I was a kid because I played it with my dad. So then when Twisted Metal 2 came out, I got that. I played 3, I played 4, I played Black. And that was about it, though. I did get the PS3 one, whatever, that's later. But yeah, so I played a lot of Twisted Metal when I was a kid. And if I remember right, so the thing about Sweet Tooth, well, the thing is, the origin stories kind of change between the games. They kind of rewrite it every time a little bit.
Because no one's going to be pissed about that.
So the thing about... So Twisted Metal Black was the one where they were, like, super fucking edgy dark. And the origin story of Sweet Tooth, it was something like... Oh, it's actually coming... It's coming back to me. He's
a Candyman
clown. He's a clown.
Okay. Or an ice cream
it's
man,
like
really.
he murders his family for some reason. I don't remember why.
Like you do.
But he's like a dad that's an ice cream man, and or like he's an ice cream man. He drives an ice cream truck.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
He's a dad that's an ice cream man, not to be confused with Clint Howard. And he murders his family, but it's something like his daughter clubs him in the head and like escapes, right? So then his whole thing is he wants to kill his daughter because he killed the whole rest of his family, and he really's got to kill his daughter now or something.
He's really got to. He's got to finish it.
Yeah, she got away, and he's not having that.
Fuck.
And then it's something like, I don't know if it's Calypso is the one that set his head on fire or something.
Huh.
His head is perpetually on fire as like, oh gosh, I don't fully remember. It's his head is on fire, so he's in constant pain. But killing people might make it better or something, or it makes it worse. I don't remember.
It could be the story of Ghost Rider.
Twisted Metal Black was that. Yeah, they like went all out on the like the dark edginess on that.
I just want that story arc. I want Ghost Rider. I just want Ghost Rider to have died a tragic accident, and then like there be some God of War story arc where it's like, Sweet Tooth, you've murdered your family. You don't know why, but you need redemption.
Well, some of the stories were pretty cool. There was one where like there's a kid where his dad was a taxi driver and he would tag along with his dad taxi driving. But one day a guy comes and he shoots his dad in the head because taxi driving is dangerous work.
Jesus.
So boom, his dad gets shot in the head right next to him. Oh no. So the kid like builds this fucking brain implant that he puts into his dead dad's head so he can control his dad with a remote control.
This is still Twisted Metal?
Yeah.
Which character is this?
Is Twisted Metal Black. His name was Yellow Jacket. He was the taxi car.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like a kid controlling his dead dad with a remote
Jesus
control.
Christ. Was Axel in black?
Say
was
again?
Axel in black? Twisted Metal Black?
I don't think Axel was in that
He's
one.
my favorite character, just because he's the most ridiculous.
Mr. Grimm in that one was like he was a POW with his buddy, and like he had to eat his buddy to survive. Was his story. Like, the only way I could survive that POW camp, I was starving. I had to kill my best friend and eat him. And then, so the helmet that he wore was his friend's skull.
Oh, my God.
Which, by the way, his friend must have had a huge fucking head for him to fit his head into his friend's skull.
His friend is Andre the Giant or something.
So, yeah, Twisted Metal Black, if that's the kind of story that you want, like where it's like no holds barred edgy darkness, the game's got some good stuff in it.
Did you see I want to say it was called Rebirth or Evolution or something like that. Did you see the Mortal Kombat live series, or at least just teasers for what could have been a movie? Live action, everything. Before Mortal Kombat 10 came out, where like they tried to give an origin story to Raiden. Like, oh well, he actually is a thunder god. Like they're not trying to make him modern and like an explainable scientific being. He's a thunder god, but he his spawn point on Earth is inside a mental asylum while he's wearing all his white robe. And they go, "Who the fuck are you? How are you not in our logs?" You know, they sedate him, they fill him up with drugs, and they give him like this like weird like time. This is like a 5-minute video. He makes friends with his inmate nut job. Like it's a mental hospital, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, you're the thunder god, whatever." And then eventually one day, like he stops taking his drugs or something, and like, I'm probably remembering it really shitty, but like the security guard is like about to beat him or something before he's trying to make him escape, and like for the first time, he grabs like a dude's wrist and just like fries the guy by holding him and just shocking him to death because he's getting some of his power from not the nether realm. Damn it, I'm Order Realm. I can't remember what
he's getting
Orm's,
his power from Nether Realms Entertainment.
Yeah, essentially from Nether Realm Entertainment. But I mean, like, there's like different realms in the MK lore now. But yeah, essentially, it was Legacy. It might have been, but either way, it was like I want what they were doing. They like okay. So Reptile, my man, it was just a person who suffered from Harlequin ichthyosis and survived into adulthood. But yeah, it's like I went with that with Twisted Metal characters. I want something that they don't give a fuck about trying to be real, but they try to explain it in a modern way and give us an origin story of the most ridiculous car characters to have ever existed. That's what I need.
Yeah. For stuff like Twisted Metal and Mortal Kombat, that kind of stuff can be super fun. I agree. I'd like that. I think we've been going on long enough. I really want to talk about like a couple games, like things I've played recently that I want to give you a little review of, or like what I've been playing recently. I want to get into it, but I think we bullshit too long.
Let's call it a new segment. Let's call it a new segment that we do at the start, maybe every time.
Perhaps, yeah. Because that's kind of when I was showing you or giving you like my idea of a schedule, right? I have it like segmented out, but when we get bullshit and it just doesn't end. So
I like bullshitting though. I have fun with it.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how we do it in the future. Because
I like having a somewhat open structure with a overall not abstract theme, but like an overall theme that we try to stick to. Like, I don't know that I want to spend a whole lot of time like editing stuff out, you know? Like if it's just like us having like mental diarrhea for a second. I kind of like the free flowingness to it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So like but yeah, at some point, you know, we gotta get into those other parts. Like when I asked you about, you know, hey, what have you been playing, right?
Yeah.
Then we talk about your fishing game. Cool, but then all of a sudden that somehow got us into talking about FMV Mortal Kombat origin stories.
Yeah. Good luck with my ADD, by the way. I'm all over the damn place.
You and me both. When I was a kid, the doctors were like begging my parents to put me on Ritalin, but they never did.
Oh, I'm jealous. I got put on it, and it was the worst shit ever.
Oh, yeah?
I hated it. I could not stand it. It made me violent and angry all the time. It did its job.
Oofta.
It did its job, but I was an angry little kid because of that stuff. Ooh, kitty crack. Not a fan.
Yeah. I never got put on it, and at the time I was all for it. I was like, "Yeah, fix me," but my parents didn't have it, and now I'm glad that they never did. But all right, I think we should be wrapping it up. Let us know in the comments. So this time the overall theme, right, was like, what is or isn't retro, and we got into like, is it a certain time? Is it a certain type of game? Is it the way that you play it or whatever, right? That was kind of our overall theme. If you guys got specific topics that you want to hear us talk about, make sure to put it in the comments and also give us some corrections. I'm drilling in right now real quick a corrections segment, all right?
Oh, okay. That's a good idea because we're going to be talking about our ass a lot.
Yeah. So last week you said something that caught my attention, but then we kind of moved past it. About Final Fantasy 5 and 6, you said you played on PS1, but you got it in a pack with tactics or something. All right. So here's what I understand about Final Fantasy on PS1. There was something called Final Fantasy Anthology. And that was 5 and 6.
That was 5 and Chrono Trigger.
I don't think so. I'm like 90% here. Anthology was 5 and 6.
Keep talking.
And that was a pack. Then there was something called Final Fantasy something else. It might have been Chronology even, or something like that. And that one was 4 and Chrono Trigger. So 4 and Chrono Trigger, and then 5 and 6 were 2 different packs, I think. And also, I want to say that there was one that was Final Fantasy 1 and 2 together, which might have been like Origins. That might not have.
So we're kind of crossing it up. It's the play on words. It's Chronicles, Final Fantasy Chronicles, which has 5 and Chrono Trigger in it.
That's 4,
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 4.
Learn your Roman numerals.
No, you're right. It's 4, but I got it in a way that like I didn't get the games that were supposed to come in the case. So like.
Yeah, you mentioned you got like the wrong thing.
Yeah, so here I have this is Chrono Trigger on PS1. So I have Chrono Trigger on PS1, but it came with Tactics, and Tactics isn't in there right now because I sold it. And then Anthology is where I played 5, but 5 doesn't come. It's not 5 and 6. It's 5 and 4.
That's 5 and 6, dude.
Motherfucker, I'm looking at it because it's backwards. No, you're totally right. It's 5 and 6. God damn it. So yeah, 4 and Chrono Trigger were together, and then 5 and 6 were together. And that's it. You know, I wanted to bring that up because I didn't correct you last week. Yeah, I have it mixed up in my head because of just like the nature of buying used games where you won't get the disc that you necessarily think you're going to get, and you should check.
Yeah. Also, I agree with Evasive J's comment in the chat that Chrono Trigger on PS1 is the worst version. Totally. I didn't play Chrono Trigger when I was younger, but my brother was insisting to me once, like, you gotta play this game Chrono Trigger, right? So I was like, all right. And the easiest way for me to get it was the PS1 version on my Vita. Because this was before I was into... This was before I was like into collecting all the hardware and original copies of everything. So I got it on Vita, the PS1 version. And yeah, it was like every time that you got into a fight, okay, you run into the enemies, Chrono pulls out his sword, and then he just sits there. And he sits there. And now the battle starts. And it's like, fuck, every single time you get into a random battle, or not so random in Chrono Trigger, but get into a battle in an RPG, and it's got that like 6 seconds of just nothing happening for a second to load the battle. It drove me insane. So then I got it on Super Nintendo and played through that instead, and it was great.
But that wasn't the PS1 version, though.
That was it was on Vita, but that's exactly.
Oh, did they use
emulation?
Did they use like the PS1 ROM or something?
Yes, I'm talking about playing the PS1 Classic
okay, I see.
On Vita. Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I have it on PS1, but I haven't tested it on PS1 hardware yet. If people are just saying it's like the bonus to it is the fact that they added FMV cutscenes, which the game didn't have before. So that's the appeal to it. But everyone says the loading screens make it really unattractive to want to play this version because you have to wait. But then I'm thinking like there are definitely games out there that like load way slower than this game probably does. Just from the very nature that it's a PS1, and I think like the Neo Geo CD ran at half the speed of the PS1's disk drive, which is 1x versus 2x.
Yeah,
but like
you feel it so hard.
Yeah,
though.
well, that's
like,
what I was gonna say. If
everybody pulls their
often,
weapons out, you're ready to fight, and then it just sits there.
Yeah,
and then it starts. It's agonizing. However, though, if you want those FMV cutscenes, the DS version of the game has the benefit of the Super Nintendo's load times and whatnot, but it has the FMV from the PS1 version.
I have heard that is the worst way to play Chrono Trigger.
The DS version?
I have heard that is the worst way.
It's arguably the best, because if you want the FMV and the not shit PS1, boom, it's got both. Of course, I'm going to say just play it on SNES. Fuck the FMV.
Of course,
you don't
yeah.
need it. Just play the Super Nintendo.
Well, I'm going to play it on
great.
PS. When I play it, I'm going to probably play it on PS1 just because it's the only way I actually own it. And I want to test it and see how bad it is. If it's like death by a million paper cuts, then I'll probably say fuck it and then just do the SNES version. But Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, that's exactly what I did. At first, I was like, yeah, I'm going to play PS1 version. It's the one I can play easily. And then, yeah, it was just agonizing.
Really? Okay.
The load times.
Oh, well, then I'll trust your judgment then, because you're pretty right about Castlevania the Adventure so far. All right, well, do you want to call that an end? Do you want to plug anything of yours?
No. I mean, hi, we're us. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time.
You're on Twitter, though, I think.
Yeah, DashRetro TV.
DashRetro TV. Okay, so you're not DashRetro everywhere.
Well, I think it was taken on Twitter, so I had to put TV at the end.
Damn, don't you hate that when someone takes something and it doesn't even use it? Yeah, I'm InvictvsNox everywhere, except it's harder to find me if you don't know that the U in Invictus is a V, in fact, which has aided me in the ability to get that name everywhere, I guess. But I'm that everywhere. I have YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the usual suspects. Dash and I both stream multiple times a week. You should check us out.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for everyone checking us out and listening and downloading and giving us your time. Peace out.